Well, it's great to be back home. I really appreciate the honor of serving you in Montpelier, and there's nothing I don't like about that work, except being away from home and being away from my family and all you people. So it's great to be back home right now, see familiar faces. Now, town meeting week is about the midpoint of the legislative session, and it's a week away from what we call crossover, and that's when bills have to make it from the House over to the Senate or vice versa if they're going to be considered by both chambers of the legislature and then make it onto the governor. It's a good chance to straddle the first and second half of the session, to look back at what we've done and look ahead to what we hope for. And one of the things I want to share is how important I feel it is. How we do things is just as important about what we do. And as we see the kind of vitriol pouring down from Washington, one of the things we're really concerned about is it not leak here into Vermont. We want to keep things civil. It's something, one of those Vermont traditions that we've always had. And to that end, I've done some volunteer work for a group called the National Institute of Civil Discourse. They're headquartered in Tucson, Arizona, and it started there after Gabby Giffords got shot, which was kind of the ultimate in incivility. And the idea is words matter, because words are the prepositions for actions. And if we can't keep it civil, we're pushing things in the wrong direction. So with that guidance, I try and bring that into the State House with everything we do. One of the important things we've done, climate change is real. Climate change is here, and everyone has to take their stand and do what we can here, even little old Vermont. Now, we just passed a bill called the Global Warming Solutions Act. We've been following other states, and Vermont's been last on the list in the Northeast, but this is an important thing. It's an important thing because it's up to us to leave the planet better than we found it. And as someone who just became a grandfather, I'm well aware that it's important to leave a legacy of a cleaner planet. Now, the old saying is the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. And the second best time is right now. The same thing with laws like the Global Warming Solutions Act. A lot of this stuff we should have done 20 years ago because people were saying 20, 30 years ago, this is what we're going to be looking to. The second best time then is right now. So that's why we're getting on with this. We're dealing with a lot of other things in the legislature. There's 25 committees between the House and Senate that are working every day. And for a more extensive look at this, we have a website, wyndham4.net, and you could look and get a little sense of what's happening in just about every committee here. One of the things I want to mention also before we leave, though, health care and access to health care is going to be a concern we have, and it's another situation that's right here, right now, something we need to deal with. There isn't a hospital in Vermont that's not being challenged right now. Access to health care is, especially in rural areas, is something we need to be intentional about moving forward on. Maybe some of you have followed that earlier this year, at the start of the year, the Brattleboro retreat made the news in a way you don't want to because they're having some struggles. And what I would say is, what's happening for the retreat is no different than a lot of other rural hospitals. The reality is the cost of services is not being met by what they're getting paid for with providers. And that's one of these things we're going to need to look at in the near future and on ahead. Lastly, I want to say something else about health. Now, is Bob Nassau here yet? Bob called me yesterday, and everybody who's got a young kid here might have seen Bob Nassau when he was a practicing pediatrician, but now he's retired, and he's only practicing a little. But he made sure to call me and say, you know, we have a public health crisis in this country. You may have heard of the coronavirus, COVID-19, and the reality is it's a public health issue that we need to face right square and head on. And we are. All hospitals regularly have infectious disease protocols, so they're ready. But on top of that, the governor has appointed a task force to make doubly sure that they're ready. So there's a lot of things we can do as individuals. We're talking about make sure you wash your hands a lot, and if you're feeling poorly, stay home and don't share the joy. But we want you to know this is something we're paying attention to. It's important to us, and together we'll get through this just like we do anything else. I think next on our list is my district mate, Nader Hashim. I just want to say Nader's doing a great job. He's in his second year, and it's been great to work with him. He's a smart guy, he works hard, and he's been a great addition to our delegation. So thank you very much.
So thank you for that, Mike. And hello, Putney. It's good to be back down south. So I wanted to say that the Wyndham delegation right now is down a member. As many of you may know, former Representative Trieber resigned to pursue his career. And I have to say I miss him a whole lot because he has this way of being critical of just about everything that comes in front of him. And you know, he really taught me a lot in how to analyze a piece of legislation regardless of where it comes from. And so his voice is definitely missed in the State House. And I just wanted to start real quick with just a quick little story about last year. So as a freshman legislator, I had a few different assumptions about how things happened in our State House, just like all the other freshmen did. And one of those assumptions I had was that in the General Assembly, Democrats sit on one side and Republicans sit on the other side. And that's how it's divided in Congress, and I just kind of assumed that's how it happens up here. And so tradition dictates that new legislators get their seats assigned to them, whereas returning legislators go to their old seats or pick new ones. So on the first day I received my seat, I went and I sat down and I looked all around me and I didn't recognize anybody. And I realized I was sitting right in the middle of the Republican caucus, and so I thought to myself, hold on, did somebody make a mistake, or did I make a mistake? What's going on? And ultimately I found out it was not a mistake, and in our State House, legislators are mixed and interspersed regardless of party affiliation. And I was a little bit nervous at first, but I'm actually really glad it's set up that way. And the reason is that because over the last year and a half, I've had some of the liveliest debates and conversations with my friends from across the aisle. I challenge them and they challenge me, and all of us together are able to think about the variety of perspectives that we bring to the table. And what is additionally important is that all these conversations are carried out with mutual respect and honesty. It's a trait in our State House that makes me especially proud to be a legislator here. And I also think it's reflective of the broader picture, and that right here in communities like Putney, we may have a diverse array of opinions on how things should be done, but we generally engage in our conversations with respect and honesty. And I'm fully confident that tradition will continue into the future. Now, moving on from that, I just want to give you a brief rundown of some of the legislation that we've worked on. My district mate touched on it. He talked about the Global Warming Solutions Act. As you know, this passed about 2 weeks ago with a strong showing of tripartisan support. And some of my thoughts related to this are that while there's a sense of immediacy in how urgently we have to act regarding climate change, it's also important to maintain hope that we'll have a clean future for the next generation of Vermonters. And one of the indicators of hope, got to move this around? More into it? Okay, is this better? Sorry about that. So one of the indicators of hope that I saw when this was being voted on was the general tripartisan agreement among folks that climate change is real and that it will first affect our farmers as well as people living in poverty. And this is a bill that will allow Vermonters to hold the government accountable through the judiciary for its climate emission goals, while also creating a plan that includes strategies and programs that will aid in addressing climate change and building resilience. And just a few days ago, the Cannabis Tax and Regulate Bill also passed in the House. The reality that we all know is that cannabis has been legal for years, but there is zero regulation. And the lack of regulation creates a variety of challenges, both as it relates to legality, safety, and consumption. The lack of regulation also ensures that all the money people are spending on cannabis is going into the black market. And I'll support legislation that prevents money from going to people who are also trafficking other drugs in Vermont as well. The role I played in this legislation was directly related to highway safety. So as a former trooper in DRE, I weighed in on the logistics and usefulness of the training and helped create provisions that would allow for more training for police to identify drug-impaired drivers. I know highway safety is a very important topic for a lot of members in the legislature as well as right here in our communities. And overall, I believe this is a bill that will keep recreational users safe from potentially tainted black market products, and it will bolster our tourism economy. And the licensing options also provide farmers with an additional moneymaker if they choose to go that route. And so that's just a very small window of the work I've been doing. As the session goes on, things get a bit more frantic and fast-paced, but regardless of all that, it still remains an absolute honor to represent all of you, and thank you for the opportunity. And so I believe I'm handing off the mic to my friends in the other body, which is the Senate.
Hello, I'm Becca Ballant. I'm one of your 2 state senators for Windham County. I live in Brattleboro, though I did live for a while on East Cemetery Falls Road, and I have a special place in my heart for Putney. I'm the majority leader in the Senate, and I just want to say, I want to start with talking just generally about democracy. As I've been traveling around to meetings in the last couple days, I do feel this heightened sense of anxiety among all the constituents that I talk to, regardless of political party. There is a sense of anxiety of where are we going in this country and how have we ceased to be able to talk to each other across the aisle. And to echo the sentiments of Mike and Nodder, this morning I was working out at a gym in Brattleboro, and the woman who hopped on next to me used to work in Phil Scott's administration. She was the Commissioner of Housing. And she's one of my favorite people. And we do not agree politically on many things, but we spent a good 40 minutes talking about housing policy in Vermont and how to get it done together. And I just want to assure you that we are working together across the aisle and keeping the best interests of Vermonters in mind. I wanted to start with the health of democracy and now shifting to the health of our people. And Mike touched on coronavirus. I just want to give you one number that I would like you to call if you've been traveling out of the country. The health department put out an alert last night, and the number is 802-863-7240, and they're asking you to call if you have been traveling outside of the country. I know that my own children have been asking me, well, what's our role in this? We don't seem to have coronavirus appearing in Vermont yet, but we have a case in Hanover where all the states surrounding us have had cases. It's just a matter of time. If you've been traveling outside the country, please call the health department and let them know so they can talk you through whether you might be at risk. The health department lab now has tests from the CDC and can do tests here in Vermont. So I just wanted you to know that. Once again, the number is 802-863-7240. So I sit on two committees in the Senate. One is the Economic Development and Housing Committee, and we passed a very large housing bond last biennium, and we're seeing the fruits of that bond. We were able to parlay $37 million into over an additional $100 million of investment, which has meant over 800 new housing units for Vermonters. We have an incredible shortage of housing across the geographic spectrum in Vermont, and we know that many of our employers are not able to bring workers here to Vermont because there is no housing. So to continue with that thrust, we've been working very hard on passing something that we're calling mini TIFs, which is tax increment financing, and I won't bore you with the details. But generally, it's a way to make local investments when you don't think you're going to be able to float the bond with the resident taxpayers that you have. And so a way to get a boost from the state to do that. These TIF districts generally are in larger towns and cities in Vermont. And it has meant like places like Putney and Townsend and Jamaica are not able to take advantage. But we're hoping in this year's omnibus housing bill, there'll be a mini TIF option for towns such as your size to get infrastructure investments in water and sewer to make it more possible to build housing in your designated downtowns. So I wanted to let you know about that. The other work that I do is in the Finance Committee, and although we deal with taxes, we also deal with pharmaceuticals. And one of my proudest moments so far this session was shepherding a bill through the Senate which will cap the amount of money that diabetes patients will be charged for their insulin. I don't know if you've been following this, but insulin prices have skyrocketed in the last decade. Vermonters in some cases are paying $1,600 a month for insulin that will keep them alive. This for a drug, when the patent was sold, the doctor sold it for $1 to the University of Toronto because he said nobody should be making money off of this. So here we are. We have patients in Vermont who are putting off taking their insulin. They're getting very sick from it. Many of you know it's life-threatening. So this bill that passed unanimously in the Senate has been sent over to the House, and I'm hoping that my counterparts in the House will be able to shepherd it through over there. It says that diabetes patients in Vermont cannot be charged more than $100 a month for any amount of insulin they may need, even if it's multiple drugs. I wish, yes, it's good news. I wish it could be less than $100. Even $100 is a lot for many people, but this, I can get very emotional talking about this. We saw a chart in the Finance Committee that took the 3 most popular insulin drugs and tracked their prices over the last decade. And there is no other way to look at this than it is price fixing. There is no other way. And so our hands are tied in terms of what we actually can do. A lot of this work needs to be done at the federal level, but until that time, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that life-saving drugs get in the hands of the Vermonters that need them. The other thing that I'm very proud of that I also worked on in the Finance Committee was a bill to regulate student loan servicers. So student loan servicers are basically the middlemen between borrowers and the institutions. And what we learned is that a lot of student loan servicers are taking advantage of borrowers to the tune of billions of dollars of additional interest in this country. So again, bipartisan support in the Senate passed unanimously to start regulating these servicers in Vermont. Just a little snapshot, most Vermont borrowers who are borrowing for college are now paying $31,000 of debt, which is a $200 payment every month for 13 years. And those folks are not investing in homes, they're not investing in their health, they're not investing in purchasing power, transportation. So we're trying to, again, make the limits that we can within the law, but I hope the House is going to be able to get that over the finish line. The last thing I want to say to you is only 30 people in the state of Vermont get to serve you in the Vermont Senate, and I am so grateful that I get to have that job. Thank you.
Thank you, and I am one of the other 30, and I represent you, and it is truly an honor to represent, be one of, okay, better? Thank you. It is truly an honor to be one of the people that represents Putney as we serve all of Vermont, and I thank you for that opportunity. So, as Becca said, in the Senate, we serve on 2 committees. I serve on Judiciary in the morning, and then I chair Government Operations in the afternoon. And in Judiciary, we have been working on looking at our whole justice system. And in 2010, we worked with the Council of State Government around what we call justice reinvestment. And at that time, our trajectory told us that if we stayed on that, or the projection showed us that if we stayed on that trajectory, we would have 2,700 people in prison by this year. 2,700 people in prison is a lot for a population of 620,000. We were the highest per capita in the nation. So we worked with them and did a lot of innovations, and as a result, we have not completely dropped, but we're at 1,700 now, so we have changed that chart. We are now going to Justice Reinvestment 2. We're starting on that, and we're looking at other ways to look at our justice system. And kind of the two main areas of focus that we have is how do we look at what crimes we have, and are they really the crimes that we think we should have? Or so lessening the number of crimes that we have, and then looking at alternatives for dealing with people who do go afoul of the law. Prison isn't always the best. In fact, it's probably never the best. But there are people who are there, and we're looking at alternatives. So that's, and I just should say that even though we're focusing on a couple different things that we're working on here, at the same time we're working on lots of other issues in all of these committees. So government operations, which I chair, sounds like probably the most boring committee in the world, but I love it. It is what I think of the foundation of democracy. We deal with elections, we deal with municipal issues, we deal with the structure of state government, we deal with law enforcement, the military. So it kind of provides the basis for everything else, I believe. Some people don't think that. They think that being sent to government operations is punishment, but I don't. So one of the things that we've done is, I served on the select board here in Putney for 9 years, and I see that the municipalities, towns really have very little power and authority. We are what is called a Dillon state, so it means that you in Putney can do only what we tell you you can do. In other states, towns can do anything that you're not prohibited doing by the state. So we are looking at making some tweaks in that, and last year the Senate passed what's called a limited municipal self-governance pilot plan. It would allow a certain number of towns to have more authority and more power. You wouldn't have to go to the state for every single thing you needed to do. So we're hoping that the House will take that up this year and that it'll pass, and it'll be limited to 10 towns in this pilot, but they're going to have to be geographically diverse, small towns, large towns, towns with town managers, towns without town managers, so we can get a sense of how this might work. We're also dealing with our EMS system and law enforcement, because we know that both of those systems are, EMS is suffering from lack of funding and from some pretty bizarre credentialing requirements that the state has put on them in the past, and we're trying to deal with that. I want to say that I want to say a word about our appropriations and how we deal with the budget. Everybody needs more money. We know that. Every group comes and needs to have more money, and that is a given, and we need to put more money into climate change. We need to put more money into public transportation. There's a lot of needs out there. And our appropriations committee, I believe, is the chair is from St. Johnsbury, and she knows state government, she knows health needs, she knows human service needs, and she has a way of balancing them, and it's not going to make everybody happy, that's true, but there is no way ever, I believe, of making everybody in the state happy, because the needs are so intense. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the Appropriations Committee and the way we deal with the budget, and then the entire Senate does that weighing when we vote on the budget. The last thing I'll say is, this is the year that we're going to start the census. And it is absolutely important that everybody respond to those census surveys. We get billions of dollars from the federal government, and it's all based on the number of people we have. If there are are many communities who are, and I don't mean communities like Putney, I mean communities of people who are leery of the census for one reason or another, or people who just think it's a stupid thing and don't want to fill out that survey. But we stand to lose billions of dollars coming into Putney if we don't answer those questions into Vermont. And so we need to make sure that, so here in Putney, make sure you have everybody register and fill out the survey, and you have friends in other places, promote it, because it is absolutely important. And there is no citizenship question on there, and I know that was a huge scare for people. But so anyway, that's all I'll say, and if you have any questions, and you can contact us. I'm just going to say our legislative website, as Mike said, is very good, and not only are the agendas on there for each committee, but every excuse me, every time somebody submits a piece of paper as a witness or a testimony, all of that is on the website. So it's a pretty complete, you can see what is really happening up there, and you can get a recording of it if you want. Thank you. What?
Sorry. Elizabeth, just because we do not have any runners today, we don't have a traveling mic. We have set up, Steve has set up a standalone mic right there in the center. So if you want to ask if you want to make a comment, because no one will be able to hear you unless you, and this is a heads up for everybody, there will be no runners. You'll need to use the standalone mic. The mic isn't on, Steve. Oh, now it is.
Sorry. One thing about the census, I was at a recent census person meeting, and the one thing he said that was surprising to me, but I think it's really important, is that you will get a census form in the mail, but it is written to box holder or occupant, and a lot of people tend to throw those things out. So please notice, if you get anything to occupant and it's in the post office, please check, but it's very likely mid-March to be your census form. And we really need you to fill it out. And you can fill it out by phone or online. Easy. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thanks to our elected officials. Thank you very much. So I'm actually going to start the formal meeting because I haven't done that yet. This was all pre the meeting. The 2020 town meeting for the town of Putney is formally started. I was going to have some announcements, and then seems like somebody has their hand up. My name is Meg Mott, and I'm your town moderator. I would like to invite to the stage Kim Monroe, who is going to be taking our minutes today, and Karen Astley, who is our town manager. So hearing no objections, I'm inviting our two key players to the stage.
Could you just tell people that Jeanette and I will be back with you?
Just so you're clear, Meg, Kim is our assistant town clerk also.
And Kim is the assistant town clerk, sorry. And select board, would you be willing to introduce yourselves?
Yes. Hi, I'm Josh, select board chair currently.
Hi, I'm Laura, select board vice chair. Oops, very loud, scary microphone.
And I'm David Babbitt, and I'm the clerk.
Great. I have a couple of announcements, and that is, if anybody has parked in the horseshoe, would you please move your car so that if you're staying here for the meeting, the parking is over there behind the school. If you're just coming in to vote, you may park in the horseshoe. So that's what the horseshoe is all about, that drive in front of the school. I am assuming that everybody who is sitting here is a Putney resident. The chain that is setting right there is for people who are not Putney residents to observe the town meeting. We're asking everybody to please check in the back. That way we'll know who's here and that you're a town resident. So if you haven't already done so, please check in behind. Great. We will be taking a recess around noon for lunch. I will try and make that happen around an article. It's always inconvenient to stop deliberating in the middle of an article, but I'll be keeping track of the clock, and we'll probably take a 45-minute break around noon. The town meeting is run by Robert's Rules of Order and also by Vermont state statute. You can change Robert's Rules of Order, however, that will take a 2/3 majority to do so. You cannot change the state law that has to do with the town meeting. There's information about Robert's Rules. I've been working with Howard Fairman this year, Laura Chapman, and I think it was Laura Casey. Putney Huddle started a great initiative a few years ago, and that was to make sure that the voters of Putney understood how Robert's Rules work. And so every year we've tried to give you more information. This year I was working with Howard Fairman, who is very good at chapter and verse for Robert's Rules. So you will find that on pages 70 to 71 in your town report. And I'm just going to go over a few really key provisions. Every article that we discuss must be moved and seconded. I will state it in its entirety, and then it is under your consideration. You all control the conversation. Articles may be amended, and we may consider one amendment and then an amendment of an amendment, but at that point, we have to stop. After you've spoken on a particular article, I would ask that you don't speak a second time until others who are waiting to speak have a chance to do so. We're going to be using voice vote. If, when I call for the ayes and then I call for the nays, if it seems as if it's too close to call and you want a division, then somebody just needs to say division and we'll get a hand count. It takes 7 people to call for a paper ballot. And the order would be first voice, then division, and then paper ballot. Debate can be cut off by a call the question. It's going to be my job to try and get the debate moving. We'll hear people in favor, people against. And if I start to feel that there aren't new arguments being made, I will start to let you know that I'm going to be moving to a vote. The reason I'm doing that is so that we can avoid calling the question. Anybody at any time can call the question, but it's a move to stop debate. It requires a second, it's non-debatable, and it takes a 2/3 majority. So I try and avoid calling the question because I'd rather have people actually deliberate the articles rather than we get into procedural problems. Right. So we are only able to discuss articles that have been warned. Any amendment that starts to move an article in a direction that the original language didn't warn will be considered non-germane. And reconsideration, which is when an article has been voted on, and somebody wants to go back and reconsider it, you may not do that once I've moved on to the next article. So we're going to deal with one article at a time, and it can't be reconsidered once we've begun discussion on the subsequent article. It's my job here to help you do the business of the town. So I may be asking you a question. If you're making a comment and it begins to look like an amendment, I'm going to ask you for very specific language, whether it is an amendment. And really the whole beautiful thing about Robert, Mr. Robert, Brigadier General Robert, is that he gives us the mechanisms to talk about one thing at a time and to hear the minority point of view. There are other ways of reaching decisions, and some of you may participate in groups in which consensus is the way to reach a decision. I don't want to say that Robert is anti-consensus, but he's very interested in giving us an opportunity to hear dissent. So unlike a consensus model where we're trying to reach the same opinion, in this procedure, I'm going to be saying, is there somebody who wants to speak against the amendment? And that's important for us to actually deliberate. I'm assuming, as I said, that everybody who's sitting here is Putney residents, and great, and that you've all been marked off, because when I call for a vote, it is only Putney residents who are allowed to do that. So before we get started with the articles, was there any questions or concerns? Yes. And we're going to have to use that standalone mic. Thank you.
Ruby McAdoo. I wanted to ask this question of our legislators, and so I don't know if they're going to be around at the end of the day, but essentially I am the clerk of the Putney Central School Leadership Council, and the co-chairs, Liz Adams. This is so annoying. I'm so sorry. I'm just going to lift this up.
Yeah.
So Liz Adams and Jamie Contois are the co-chairs. They're also here. We have a table in the back. The reason I'm standing up and what I'd like to hear from the legislators, if they can speak to it, is that there's a lot going on both in our local school board. I've been attending the merged school board meetings, and it seems like there's a lot of special ed funding decisions that are coming down the pike, and I would like to hear what's going on in the legislature. I'd also like to just urge everyone to stick around after lunch in the other business portion, because I do think the Leadership Council would like to engage with everyone and let everyone know what's going on in the school and in the district. But anyway, so that's what I would have liked to have asked the legislators.
Two things, and one is Mike Merwicki will be returning, and I believe Jeanette White will as well, so they will be around later. I'm not going to be able to allow for other sort of announcements and that sort of thing. We'll do that towards the end. But if there were any questions about Robert's rules at this point, otherwise, I think we're going to get started. So, this is the 2020 warning for the annual meeting. The legal voters of the town of Putney are hereby notified and warned to meet at the Putney Central School in Putney at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020, to act upon the following articles. Polls opened at 10 a.m. and will be open today until 7 p.m. The first two articles are going to be decided by Australian ballot. The first one, Article 1, to choose all town officers required by law to be elected at the annual town meeting. We will not discuss Article 1. It will be decided by Australian ballot. Article 2, the town of Putney seeks voter approval to purchase a new 2021 fire engine for the Putney Fire Department to be financed by general obligation bonds or notes for a purchase price not to exceed $550,000. The language on the Australian ballot is included in Article 2. Although we will not be deliberating Article 2, we may ask questions, and the Select Board is here to answer any questions that you may have about Article 2. Are there any questions for the Select Board? Yes. And when you come to the mic, if you would just state your name. Thank you.
Alan Blood. I'm sorry I haven't been paying as much attention as I should. I assume that this is to replace a truck that we have that's falling apart, but maybe somebody could give a sentence or two on that.
Select Board.
Tom was here a moment ago. Do you want to speak to this article, Tom, or? Yeah, why don't you?
I don't know if I need a microphone or if everybody can just, yes, okay.
Yeah, and you can always pull it out, and Steve has provided handy wipes in case for concerns about, and are we going to worry about feedback, Steve? Okay.
Will we good? Yep, we are. Okay. To give a little bit of history with this, the truck that we're looking to replace is a 2006, one of our two primary engines. Excuse me. And we're actually looking to replace this engine early, 4 years early. The truck's not due for replacement for another 4 years, which means in reality we wouldn't see a new truck for 5 years because there's a 9 to 12 month build time. The reason that we're bringing this forward now, early, is simply because of the cost savings associated with this project. Unfortunately, given the situations that we're in with different tariffs, just the general costs associated with fire trucks and emergency services apparatus today, we're looking at costs that we haven't seen before. Typically, we've been very used to cost ranges of $230,000 to $280,000, and now, like you're aware, we're at $550,000. We have no control over that. The truck that we're speccing is nothing more than we've ever had, than we're used to. There's nothing extravagant about this truck at all whatsoever. It's built to work. It's not built to look pretty. So that's where we're at with that. So again, the truck that we've got that we're going to be replacing is a 2006. We're starting to see some issues with it. Some electrical problems. We just had to replace a computer in it to the tune of about $3,200. There will be more of that coming. I'm certain. We're looking at some mechanical things that are going to be creeping up on us. So again, all of it put together, that's why we're coming early. When I mentioned the cost savings associated with buying this truck now versus waiting 4 years, the cost that we're looking at, the money that we're looking to save, in reality is just over $200,000. So that's why we felt it was appropriate, as well as the select board, the town manager, felt it was appropriate to bring it forward now, knowing that we're going to be actually saving that kind of money over the next 4 years. If we wait 4 years, then we're going to be looking for $200,000 plus more. So that's where we stand.
So just a couple of the drivers behind that, not the wrong term, but mincing my words. Sorry, Meg, is it all right if I comment also?
Sure.
Thank you. The cost for the truck itself increases on an average of 3 to 4% per year. So that's just a projected cost. So when you take the truck value before trade-in of $650,000 and increase that by 3 to 4% per year, that ends up being over $100,000 there. The other savings that we think we would realize is that the truck that we currently own has a trade-in value probably in the ballpark of $80,000 to $100,000, and in 4 years it's projected that its trade-in value will be more like 20 or less. So those are two of the components. And then also interest rates right now. One of the reasons that we are asking folks to do this, to vote on a bond issue, is because the interest rates for bonds are incredibly favorable. Right now, they are projected as 1.45%. Can we guarantee that would be the price we would get if this is approved and we go forward? No, because the bonds are issued twice annually by the state of Vermont, and that shifts day by day as they go. But, we all are aware that interest rates could be dramatically higher in 4 years, and that's something we can't predict, but it's some of the thinking behind why we're looking at this now instead of 4 years down the road.
Do we have any other questions about Article 2? Yes.
So is the trade-in value going to be put against this $550,000, or is that
That's included in that
It is
500.
included.
So the actual, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, the actual cost of the truck is closer to $650,000, but we are considering a range of, we are, as the article is written, we would not be borrowing any more than 550, and that reflects a trade-in value of roughly 80 to 100 on the truck.
And
So-
just a reminder, if people could state their name, that was Janice Baldwin. Are there any other questions about Article 2?
Lionel Chute. I was just wondering, I assume there's some sort of a capital reserve, there's some kind of a dedicated fund for fire truck replacement. Is that true? And if it is, then how does the borrowing of the $550,000 relate to whatever kind of a reserve may have been accruing over this time for this purpose?
So we do have a fund. It's called the Public Safety Reserve Fund, and in it today is $65,669.75. That being said, the Select Board could utilize part of that. The other thing too, money goes into this reserve fund from contributions from the private schools every year. So there is about $56,000 that's added to that as well.
So the answer to your question, I guess, Lionel, would be that there is not a large reserve fund, obviously. No. It hasn't been our practice in recent years, and we've been having recent discussions about whether we should be looking. We have a capital plan that lays out the time frame for how we would purchase, et cetera. It hasn't made, from my perspective anyway, a whole lot of sense, given how favorable interest rates have been over the last number of years, to be putting reserve funds aside, because we are not eligible to benefit dramatically from having that money as far as interest rates are concerned. We are limited to our investments are governed by statute. So when we put money aside, it's not a big money earner for us, and with low interest rates, that has not, the Select Board has not taken that path. We're currently discussing whether we want to, over the next handful of years, shift in that direction to create a larger capital fund, partly in anticipation of likely higher interest rates going forward. But it's always a trade-off whether there's value in having significant reserve funds for something like this or not, and we just haven't been following that path, but are open to considering it, and are considering it.
Any other questions about Article 2? Yes, we have one in the back.
Hi, Craig Goldberg. So brief comment and question. Comment is I assume that you all have a reason why we're voting prior to having discussion on this article, but my question would be, would it be possible in the future when we have large ticket items like this to vote on, that we have discussion like this first? It's really helpful for some of us that haven't maybe heard about what all the reasons are ahead of time for making a purchase like this, and this has been very interesting discussion to hear both from the fire chief as well as from the Select Board about why this truck is needed. So I would just ask that in the future, please consider that we have this discussion first and then have the vote afterwards. Thanks.
As per statute, all right if I respond, Meg?
Sure.
As per statute, we had 2 public meetings related to this article. One 10 days ago.
February 12th
and then again.
February 26th.
They were well posted as best as we could. We had a very small number of people turn up for them, so I would just, in response, encourage people to pay attention when town meeting is 30 days out to things that are coming up that will be open for discussion prior to an Australian ballot vote, because we are, again, required by statute to have those public hearings related to that.
I assumed that you did, even though I was not able to attend them. And as you mentioned yourself, those meetings were poorly attended, whereas this meeting is usually better attended. So that's why I would make the comment. I'm not saying to not have your public meetings, and those, but just at least consider that this is the place where more people will attend and more of us can hear the issues.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions about Article 2? Yes. We have a couple more questions.
Hi, my name.
Hang on one
sorry.
sec.
Respond to, I think there was a little bit of a misunderstanding. We're required by state statute to do this vote through Australian ballot because we're going out for a bond. So we could not have had this discussion and not put it on the Australian ballot. Is that helpful? Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michaela Marmion. I was just wondering about the specific vehicle you chose. For me, fuel emissions and looking at alternative energies is really important, and especially because we're buying it early or looking into that. I'm really curious about how you made the choice and how climate impact has been considered in choosing this specific vehicle.
Do we have an answer from the Select Board?
Yes. This came up, you may or may not remember, from last year's town meeting, this came up as a question related to highway trucks. We have had that conversation both in those public meetings and also in regular select board meetings. We are not yet at a point where that technology is, for our size and needs of a town, appropriately applicable. The first hybrid electric fire truck was just introduced recently in LA. First one introduced in this country. They're becoming more common in European countries, but are not yet widespread here. The nature of a fire truck is such that it has to be able to go out and work for many, many, many hours at a time. So that is not conducive to a fully electric, but it is conducive to hybrid. We had that discussion. The one that was purchased by LA County, my understanding, and this is strictly anecdotal, was $1.2 million. We are definitely cognizant and watching as that technology, I mean, my guess is that in the next 5-ish years, there will be, for fire trucks, they fit into a category that's a little tricky because of that specific need. So a hybrid might make sense. A full electric, not so likely, I wouldn't think, in the near future. But with highway trucks, a higher likelihood of that. And it definitely is a topic of discussion that we have regularly. And actually, Doug Grant has been taking us to task on that and making sure that discussion continues. So we've considered it not yet a financial reality, and in fact, I think not really a reality, just practicality-wise yet for us. But thank you for the question, though.
Any other questions on Article 2? We have one in the front and then one in the back. Yep, if you could state your name.
Patricia Blum. I'm just wondering, I assume you broke this down per capita, how much it's going to affect the tax of each household. Do you know the cost annually per household?
Give us a few minutes. We'll try and work through that. We have presentation as the total annual cost, but we haven't broken it down as far as effect on tax rate. So why don't we take some other questions and we'll try and get back to you.
So there was in the back, yeah, Elizabeth.
Morning, Elizabeth Fox. Wondering about the longevity of fire trucks. This one seems about 14, 15 years currently. Is that the same for the upcoming one? And also you mentioned that this is one of 2 primary trucks, so when might we expect the second one to go?
So I'll actually start with the second question first. We've got a total of 8 fire apparatus. Wait a minute, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, including the car that's assigned to me. 3 of those vehicles, my car, the squad, and our brush truck, those overall are at the time they would ever need to be replaced, are very low cost vehicles, especially when we purchase off state bid, which we've started doing, we started doing that 4 or 5 years ago now. Our ladder truck, we bought secondhand however many years ago, a few years ago now. 10 years ago, Chris, thank you. And that truck will last us a very, very long time. We were fortunate to find that truck at the cost that we did. We take care of it. We keep up on the maintenance for it. And again, that truck will last us a very long time. None of us at the department ever foresee the town of Putney or the Putney Fire Department having a brand new aerial ladder unless something dramatic happens with ours and insurance pays for it. That will never be our intent, and I certainly don't foresee, again, unless something catastrophic occurs with our existing ladder, I don't foresee us even needing to talk about buying another ladder for 15, 20 years at least. The next truck in line is the tanker. We've actually changed over the last 10 years the way that truck operates. That truck now simply shuttles water. That's all it does for us, and it does it well. That truck was built, and you'll hear this term come up again shortly, that truck was built heavy, which means it's got a large motor, large transmission, large front end, large rear end, so on and so forth, and the truck was built right for us, and that truck will last us a long time. We have absolutely no plans, again, assuming nothing catastrophic occurs, we have no plans on replacing that in the near future. The two workhorses of the department, those are the two engines. Very similar, people will remember about 5 years ago, our engine 2 was due for replacement. When that truck was built new, that was intentionally, by the department at the time, built again heavy. And what that means is that a heavy front end, heavy rear end, heavy transmission, big motor, so on and so forth, all the way from the tires right up through the truck, everything was spec'd heavy duty. So what happened with that truck is we ran it for its 20-year lifespan. We took a very, very close look at it. We opted to refurb it at about a quarter of the cost of a new truck. And we're going to run that another 20 years. It's worked very, very well. Same concept with this new truck. Our goal and what we have spec'd out thus far is the truck will be built heavy. We'll run it 20 years and we'll do a moderate refurb on it. Again, at that point, what we can forecast is being about a quarter of the cost of a new one.
We seem to be having some feedback issues on that mic. Yeah. Are there any other questions? Sure.
Another detail, the current truck was built light, and that's why it can't be, sorry. The current truck was built light, and that's why it's not being rebuilt. Does that?
Can I expand on that?
Yeah.
Just to expand on the reasons why. When that truck was built or new to us in 2006, we knew that it wasn't the truck that we wanted it, and we knew that it wasn't the truck that the town should have. However, our backs were against the wall. When I say our backs, I mean the department as well as the town, because we had just come off of the pool.
No, the library, the fire station.
The firehouse construction, the new water system, and a pretty significant wastewater upgrade, if I remember right. So all those things added up. The select board, and I respected their decision at the time. I understood where they were coming from. They said, you have X amount of money. Don't ask for any more. You're not going to get it. This is what you've got to get your truck. So what that forced us to do was, and we didn't have any choices at that point. We needed, our old engine 1 had to be replaced. It was dead. So at that point, what it forced us to do was get a lightly built truck. So instead of building everything heavy, this is the lightest weight stuff you can get. And along with that comes downgrades in all the wiring, all the computers, so on and so forth. So we know it just isn't going to work. Just to add on that a little bit, we did look into refurbing this truck that we've got, and honestly, the best way to have that done is for the manufacturer to do it. So that would involve our truck going down to Ocala, Florida for a refurb. The manufacturer said, we will not do that because it's not cost effective. It makes no sense because there's nothing to work with. Everything is lightweight, everything is light duty, there's just nothing to work with. So I hope that clarified a little bit.
Are there any other questions? I don't see
Meg,
any.
can I go back to the answer to the question here of how it would affect tax?
Great.
This is a little bit of a round number because we don't have all the details until it happens, but be roughly an increase of $25 per $100,000 of value on your home per taxpayer. So if you own a $200,000 home, it would be an additional $50 per year that would go towards paying the bond and the interest on this. So over 10 years.
All right, so it sounds like all the questions have been answered. We're not waiting on any other answers. I don't see any other hands up. And as I mentioned, Article 2 will be decided by Australian ballot. We will now move on to Article 3, to see if the town will accept the report of the last town meeting. You can find that report in your, on pages 65 going forward. Do I have a motion? Kathleen, Kathleen, what is your last name? Kathleen O'Reilly, thank you, has moved. And do we have a second? Elizabeth Christie has seconded. It has been moved and seconded for Article 3. Is there any discussion about the report? Any corrections? It looks as if we're ready to vote. All those in favor of accepting the town report, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. It appears that the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and Article 3, the town's report has been approved. Article 4, to hear and act upon the reports of the town officers. You can find that on pages 19 through 28. Do I have a motion for Article 4? Kathleen O'Reilly. Do I have a second? Janice Baldwin. Sorry, I don't know your name. Anyway, second, Janice Baldwin. It has been moved and seconded to hear and act upon the reports of the town officers. Are there any questions or comments? It appears that we're ready to vote, right? We have had a motion and seconded. All those in favor of the reports of the town officers, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. It appears that the ayes have it. And we have heard and acted upon the reports of the town officers. If you notice, I'm looking down at the front row here periodically. That's Howard Fairman, who has agreed to be the parliamentarian for this meeting.
Meg?
Yes.
Could I maybe quickly do Community Service Award?
Oh,
at this
I'm
stage?
so sorry that I forgot that.
That's
Absolutely.
okay.
Thank you very much. My apologies.
Before we move on to larger, greater town business, wanted to make a statement about Community Service Award. This year's nominee was brought forward by Jonathan Johnson, who's our town clerk. And statement reads, the town of Putney provides a location where residents may drop off their Vermont returnable bottles and cans. The proceeds are designated for the Putney Pool. Before the bottles and cans can be picked up by the Redemption Center, they must be sorted to separate bottles and cans and to remove non-returnable items and trash that people drop in the bins. It is important that the work be performed on a regular schedule so that the bins don't overflow. The sorting work has always been done by volunteers. In the past, when the volunteers didn't show, town hall staff performed the sorting and cleanup as needed. Since last spring, our volunteer has been Julian Lavoie. Where previous volunteers would wait weeks before coming to sort, Julian comes every week. Moreover, I frequently have an email from Julian when I arrive at work on Monday morning informing of how full the bins are, he checks them on Sunday, and when he will be in to sort. Recently, Julian has taken over the responsibility of scheduling the pickup from the Redemption Center. Julian has done a great job in keeping the drop-off area clean and safe. So far this year, Julian has sorted well over 30,000 bottles and cans to the tune of $1,500 at 5 cents a piece for 30,000 in a cheerful and capable manner. Julian's hard work and dedication makes Putney a better place to live, and the Select Board wants to say thank you by awarding Julian Lavoie the 2020 Community Service Award. So, thank you so much.
Excellent. That makes me so happy to know you're doing that work every week. Thank you. We will now move to Article 5. To elect 3 trustees.
Sorry, Meg,
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay.
Julian just notified me that only his mother calls him Julian. He really goes by Jules. And I also just want to encourage people, not that we want to make his job harder, but remember when you're taking your bottles and cans that there's an easy place to drop them in the shed behind town, in front of the shed behind Town Hall, and that no liter bottles, no water bottles, but otherwise it's all going towards the Putney Pool, so a very good cause. So thank you again.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
All right. We can now move to Article 5, to elect 3 trustees to the Putney Public Library Board. I believe that we have somebody who has some names. Yes, Meredith Wade.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Meredith Wade. I feel like I should face this way and not to you all.
Yeah.
I'm Meredith Wade. I'm the current chair of the library board, and I want to first say thank you to our very dedicated director and staff of the library for all they do all the time. They work every year to identify new products and services and support for this community, for the very diverse needs of the community. And I think we really appreciate all that they do. And I also want to say thank you to the community, because it's because of all of you and to serve all of you that we exist. And feel like we're an important part of the community because of that. And the nominees who we have for trustees for 3-year terms are Kevin Champney, Amber Paris, and Rebecca Nixon.
Kevin, can you say that one more
Kevin
time?
Champney, Rebecca Nixon, and Amber Paris.
Amber Paris, okay. Are there any nominations from the floor? It looks like our 3 nominees are Kevin Chantley, Amber Paris, and Rebecca Nixon. I'm going to propose that we vote on them as a slate rather than running each name forward individually. So hearing no objections, we will run these names as a slate. All those in favor of Kevin Chantley, Amber Paris, and Rebecca Nixon to be the library trustees, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. It appears that the ayes have it, and those 3 members are now part of the trustees. Thank you very much for doing this. We will now move to Article 6. To see if the town will vote to exempt the Putney Gun Club from municipal and educational taxation on the improvements, appurtenances, and land off of Sand Hill Road, Lot 070339, for a period of 5 years, beginning April 1st, 2020, as authorized by 32 VSA Section 38327. You can find the lots that are exempted in the town report, and other information on pages 63 to 64. Is there somebody who wishes to move Article 6? Kathleen O'Reilly. Do we have a second for Article 6? Alice Mays. It has been moved and seconded for Article 6. Is there somebody here who wishes to speak on behalf? Yes, and are you not a Putney resident? Could you just tell me your name? James Olmsted. Hearing no objections, I would like to invite James Olmsted to speak on Article 6.
Hi, I'm James Olmsted. I've been a resident in the area all my life. I grew up in Dummerston, just down the road.
And you can take the mic out of its stand, yes.
All right,
Thank you.
how does this sound? Better, I can hear myself now also. Just to give you a brief history, there is a little write-up in the town report, but Putney Gun Club was founded in 1951. Its purpose was to promote competitive shooting with small bore 22 caliber rifle. There was a Cheshire Wyndham Rifle League was formed with 5 teams in Cheshire County, New Hampshire, and Wyndham County, Vermont. And it's been running ever since. Excuse me. Our Rifle League runs from January to March in the wintertime. And the rest of the year, the club is pretty much not used, except for perhaps, and in the past, Boy Scouts have used the range for merit badges, and hunter safety has been held there most every year for the past 10 years. Unfortunately, our shaker and leader of that has moved on. He retired, Mike Colson moved to Island Pond. And we're looking now for someone to take over and head up that program. I've got somebody I'm going to contact, and hopefully they will steer us in the right direction, get us a hunter safety instructor. Most of you probably know, but hunter safety instructors have to take a course with the Fish and Game Department in order to become certified to teach hunter safety courses. And now anyone that buys a hunting and fishing license, not a fishing license, rifle license or bow license must pass a hunter safety course. As I say, Mike moved to Island Pond. Another man, Dave Smith, he was very instrumental in the running and upkeep of the club. He unfortunately has some severe health problems now. And we're hoping to get the club moving in the right direction and have a little more activity in it. Any residents interested in improving their marksmanship, we can work out something. However, we don't want any just, as I call them, prayer and sprayers up there shooting up the rifle range. It's designed strictly for 22 caliber. The range is 50 feet long. The building is cement block. We have a steel backstop. So the noise level, you can hardly hear a shot go off when you're outside the building. The rifle bullets themselves are contained within the building, so there's no danger to the public, there's no noise. We like to say we're located right opposite the ball field on Sandy Hill Road. And the parking area is there. If there was an overflow, we wouldn't mind someone parking at the range facility. Let's see what else. I guess that about sums it briefly. So any questions? Yes.
I've supported this over the years. In fact, I brought 5 years ago up for tax exemption, and now I don't support it. And the reason I don't is, we're talking about January to March. Not many people, it's not used that much. You're not, wait a minute, you're not giving us any statistics on how often it's used. You haven't said how many people use it. I know the last time I heard from you all, it was that all the towns around use it. So I would like to see them chip in and pay the taxes on that and not go ahead and be tax exempt.
So I'm going to jump into this. What we heard was an argument in favor of Article 6. And then Eva Mondin gave us an argument against Article 6. I'd like to hear from other people. So if you don't mind putting the mic back into
No, I don't. I just have one thing. We are a IRS 501(c) nonprofit organization.
Great. Okay, thank you. Is there somebody else who wishes to speak in favor of Article 6? Yes.
Hi, I'm Kathleen O'Reilly, and I do want to speak in favor of it because of the hunter safety and bow certification that they offer. They plan on continuing to offer it, and right now the nearest place...
We have some feedback.
Oh.
Steve's working on it.
Is in Winooski. Closer? How's this? Okay, feel like Goldilocks. So let's see. Yeah, I want to speak in favor of it because it does provide hunter safety. It also gives people a place to come and ask questions. I know that Dave Smith was very instrumental and very warm in opening to people. He's not from Putney. Many of the people who have been involved in it are not from Putney, but the goal moving forward is to get more people involved. I spoke to Jim prior to coming here today, and I encouraged there being a board, there being open house nights, and there being an opportunity for people to just come ask questions. I mean, it's not about firearms, good or bad, it's about safety. And I am a great believer in that. So I'm in favor of it.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Is there somebody who wishes to speak against who has not spoken? Alan Blood.
Alan Blood. Excuse me. It seems to me that in the years past when we've approved this, it's been primarily because of the hunter safety issues. And I may have misheard it, but my understanding is there is no hunter safety course happening there at the moment. They don't have an instructor. My suggestion would be that we decline their request this year, and if they have an active program next year, that we reconsider it at that point. Thank you.
Is there somebody who wishes to speak in favor of Article 6? In favor, yes. A question?
Janice Baldwin, I have a question. How much money are we talking about here?
It's in our town.
Yeah, we're trying to find it, sorry.
Where's Jordy can answer that question?
Yeah, Jordy, are you here? Do you know that one offhand?
$87,000.
$87,000 is the value of it. That's not what we're talking. So the tax implications of that
Would be the non-residential tax rate, I think 238 this year.
Jordy, can you use the mic and say your name, please?
Jordy Heller.
Thank you.
The $87,200 value would be the value based, and then the non-residential tax rate, which I think this year is $2.38 per hundred.
About $2,000, 2,070.
Yeah.
Can somebody say that with a
It's
mic?
about 2,070, you said, Alan? Yes.
Is there somebody who wishes to speak? I'm sorry, I lost track of where I was. I think Janice asked a question, so we're looking for somebody who will speak against. Is there somebody who has not spoken who wishes to speak against? I don't see any other hands up but Eva, so I'm going to say Eva can come back. Oh, I'm sorry, you. Would you like to take the mic? We have a question.
Robin Ekstrom. I just had a question for the gentleman who spoke for the gun club. How many folks are actually using it during the season of January to March currently? Thank you.
Would you mind answering that? Can you get a mic? Yep, you can come forward and get the mic.
Probably holler loud enough. No? Okay.
Besides, it's exciting. Maybe you'll get some feedback and everybody will wince.
We have 6 people on our team.
6 people on the team? And so is that the 6 people who are using it during the season?
For our home team, yes. There's also 2 other clubs that come on a rotating program for the Rifle League during the winter.
Great.
And can I
Is
ask
that-
a question, Meg?
Yeah.
And can you just comment on historically the number of hunter safety courses, the number of students? If you,
I know I wasn't involved with the program while Mike was teaching it. I think that I've heard the figure 40 thrown out, and that I'm quite sure that he had to turn away people because they just couldn't handle more than that. There is a huge demand for hunter safety, and like I say, I'm going to get together with other members, the people that helped Mike run the course, and try to get a program going for this year. Yes.
I'm sorry, I'll need to call on. We have somebody coming forward to speak against? Oh, are you coming to ask a question? All right, I think I'm still on against, so we'll just, is there anybody who wishes to speak against? Eva?
I think it's time that this organization, what they're offering in the community, come to an end. I've never seen them advertise the hunter safety program. It's advertised in Guilford. It's advertised all around. I used to hunt. I know it's a wonderful idea, the hunter safety program. It's never been advertised in Putney. And so towns that advertise it, you can go from Putney and take it. I don't know about the Boy Scouts using it, but I don't know about the Boy Scouts either. And so I really think that it's time to lay it down, really do. I'm the one that proposed and harassed. In fact, the guy who used to run it, he was a friend of mine, and I stood up for this whole process and harassed y'all to get nonprofit status. But it's over. I think it's over. Thank you.
And we have somebody who wants to speak in favor, is that all right? I'm going to go to the first, sorry.
Deb Stetson, I'm in favor of it. I believe in this day and age. All right. I think we should be supporting the gun club and the hunting program, and I think if you build it, they will come. I think we need to give them a chance to try to get it active again. It's recently been very active. There have been 40 people that have come even without advertising, as you might say. I don't know, maybe they did, but yeah, I think we should support it. And it's only $1 more in your taxes, something like that, if it's $2,000 a year. So I think it's worth it, especially in this day and age where people are going out and needing to get their own food.
Great. So I have a question from the floor. I'm sorry, from the select board.
I'm curious if we can amend, can everybody hear me? I'm afraid to use this. I'm curious if we can amend this for a period of 1 year in order to give them time to kind of get it together through these transitions and come back to us and show us a new plan.
So Laura, are you amending? So the amendment, if I hear you correctly, Laura, is for a period of 1 year, beginning April 1st, 2020, as authorized by 32 VSA section. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I have an amendment, but I need to get a second. Sorry. While we have the amendment on the floor, I need to get a second. And the second is Lionel? No. I'm sorry, can you remember? Lawrence. What was the last name? Lawrence O'Neill. So it has been moved and seconded to amend Article 6. We are now discussing the amendment. Is there somebody who wishes to speak in favor of the amendment?
I'm not sure we are allowed to do that statutorily. I'm not sure we aren't. I don't know whether, Howard, that's anything you can figure for us quickly, but my recollection, and Jordy, maybe you know, that this is 3 years or 5 years typically, and maybe 1 year's acceptable, but...
Jordy Heller, a couple of years ago for Putney Cares, we did it for 1 year.
We did? Okay. That's, as long as it's statutorily allowable.
So we are now debating the amendment, which is for 1 year. Is there somebody who wishes to speak in favor of the amendment? A question?
Lisa Papazian. I guess I would like to know what voting no, or what the $2,000 would mean to the Gum Club in terms of its budget. It seems like it might kill it altogether. So I'm just wondering.
I'm going to take that as a question, even though we really are going to be deliberating the amendment, but I'm going to take that as a question. Do we have an answer? Yes.
You can take it off, but important not to point it at.
Okay. One thing I'd like to clarify that it was unclear on before, with a figure 40 I threw out, that was for 1 year's training, not total. And right now, our treasury has about $1,500 in it. We have limited members. If you tax us, someone else is going to own the building, probably the town, so. $75 for membership. That's for anyone.
So we're not hearing these questions, so I'm going to have to ask you, either use the mic.
Okay,
but just
the question was what a membership cost.
Okay, and the answer was?
$75.
$75. And just to remind us all, we are still deliberating the amendment. So is there somebody who wishes to speak against the amendment? Is there somebody who wishes to speak for the amendment? Robin?
Robin Ekstrom, I would just encourage the town to vote in favor of this amendment. It gives the gun club a year, which seems like a reasonable time to find somebody who's willing to take on the responsibility of teaching a course in gun safety, which I definitely feel strongly is a very good thing, hiking the woods and around here. And if at the end of that time they've been unable to take up that role, then I think it would be plenty time enough to consider terminating the tax relief for this organization at that time. Thank you.
Is there somebody who wishes to speak against the amendment? It looks like we may be able to vote on the amendment. All right, we are voting on Article 6 as amended to see if the town will vote to exempt the Putney Gun Club from municipal and educational taxation on the improvements, appurtenances, and land off of Sand Hill Road. for a period of 1 year. See, I was, just the amendment. So but yeah, right, but I was reading it as amended so people at least knew what it was that we were voting on for a period of 1 year beginning April 1st, 2020. So we're just voting on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed to the amendment, please indicate by saying nay. Nay. It appears that the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and the amendment passes. We are now discussing the article as amended. Are there any questions? Is there anybody who wishes to speak in favor of the article as amended? Anybody who wishes to speak against the article as amended? It looks like we're ready to vote. We are now voting on Article 6 as amended, to see if the town will vote to exempt the Putney Gun Club from municipal and educational taxation on the improvements, appurtenances, and land off of Sand Hill Road, Lot 070339 for a period of 1 year, beginning April 1st, 2020, as authorized by 32 VSA Section 3832(7). All those in favor of the article as amended, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. It appears the ayes have it. Article 6 passes as amended. We are now moving to Article 7. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to borrow an amount not to exceed $190,000 to purchase a dump truck for the Highway Department to be repaid by a promissory note with a term of not more than 5 years. Do we have a motion? Robin O'Neill, is it? Ekstrom. Robin Ekstrom. Do we have a second? Could you give us your name? Melanie Fletcher has seconded. Article 7 has been moved and seconded. Is there somebody here who wishes to speak on behalf of Article 7? People are looking for Brian.
Brian? Brian's not here. Okay, so I'll speak a little bit to it. This is the, as per our capital plan that we talked about earlier, this is the sort of regular rotation of a truck being rotated out after 10 years. Experience has shown us that the 10-year ballpark tends to be a marker for when maintenance costs start to increase, also tends to be a marker for when turn-in value starts to drop off pretty quickly. Again, I will just say that given the discussion from earlier about capital planning, that it has been a topic of discussion amongst the Select Board as to whether we are going to continue in this vein of borrowing for vehicles at 10-year increments, whether we can look at different ways of modeling that as far as either holding on to vehicles longer and or financing them differently or putting aside reserve funds for them. So, but again, it's sort of replacement. I don't remember which. It's for the replacement of number 5, I think. But it's replacing a Mack truck, which I believe is the 2010 Mack, which I believe is the last. We've gone mostly over to Western Star for a couple reasons. The dealership is right here, and we've gotten good value out of them and had excellent service, and it's right nearby to get servicing, which is a benefit to us. I believe this is our last Mack, and we will be, if we go ahead with this purchase as proposed, it would be a Western Star to replace it also. So our whole fleet would then be Western Star vehicles.
Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Gail Haynes, and my question would be the one that was raised earlier about, you spoke of trying to think about energy efficiency and things, and I consider energy efficiency both the use of the energy, but also this question that you said you're thinking about of how to keep things alive longer in this motorized world.
Do we have an answer?
So what you're referring to is the embodied energy that goes into the construction of a vehicle. And these are vehicles that when we sell them, they go on to further use elsewhere. So it's not like that truck is getting thrown away. And I'm not trying to sort of explain that away, but just a fact related to that is they don't just disappear. They do often get bought by smaller or less used operators who use them less and are less dependent on them on a regular basis. But in the same vein as the conversation before, we're keeping our eye on the availability and price point of potential fossil fuel replacement vehicles, not yet a reality for us as far as that's concerned. They are, all of these vehicles that we consider, and this was part of a discussion we had the other night, they are all governed by federal emissions laws. So they are the cleanest vehicles that are readily available to us within those constraints. And Vermont is a little bit lax on that, but it's mostly governed by federal. So they're as clean as we can get. I think, sorry, I can't. Boy, I really don't have an answer to that one for you. Sort of scarily low would be my guess, just because they're surprisingly large vehicles working hard. And then also, as we all know from our own practical use, when they're doing stop and go and short trips, it also goes up. So, you know, we could probably sort of figure that out based on our annual usage of fuel, but we haven't looked at that. So, you want to comment, David?
I wanted to ask,
Microphone.
sorry. I wanted to ask Karen something about the program to replace trucks. This truck, we're heading to a time when the
10
trucks...
years.
10 years, okay. So we're heading toward a period of time, my understanding is that we won't be replacing another truck next year or the year after. We're actually heading to a window. I thought maybe you could speak to that. Thank you.
I believe our next replacement of a truck is 2023, I think. 2013 was probably.
It is 2023, right?
Is when another one would come back up for
Yes.
replacement. Yeah.
Yeah, because the grader and the backhoe, our final payments will be in fiscal year '21. So those are going to go off in '22. And then, yeah, we're going to need another dump truck at that point in '23. So the way the cycle is, because of debt service, because we're borrowing, we're trying to look ahead to see if it makes more sense to possibly buy it outright. But we got to plan for that, and it's going to be about timing. So, but the future is looking a little bit better, where we're going to be seeing some things drop off, and that includes the fire station, like in 2027. So, as Josh pointed out, though, the rates are so low right now that we're still taking advantage of that.
Are there any other questions? Would somebody wish to speak against Article 7? It looks like we may be ready to move to a vote. We've heard we've heard somebody speak in favor, we've had questions answered. I think that yes?
It's Alan Blood again. We're doing the fire truck by Australian ballot and this one by a vote here. Is that just because of the size of the amount?
It's partly the size. It's also we're going to bond for the fire truck, so it's a requirement that it's bought by Australian ballot. That's partly because the rates were so favorable on that.
So
but
bond means it goes through the state system?
Municipal
and
bond
otherwise, we're just
system.
borrowing from a bank?
Exactly.
Right.
And it's less expensive. We explored that for the fire truck, and it's less expensive for us to do it through the bond system, but it's a cumbersome process for one, and also I believe they don't offer 5-year bonds. Is that correct? So it would draw. I might be wrong about that, but this is a 10-year bond that we're looking at. I think that's the shortest bond they offer, isn't it?
For the fire truck?
I don't think they offer bonds for less than 10 years.
No, they can do a 5-year
Oh, they can.
bond too, but the process is tedious, and you would have to have Australian vote, 2 public meetings. So for the 190,000, we can go to a bank and get a pretty good rate.
Are there any other questions about Article 7? It looks like, oh, we have one right here.
Lawrence O'Neill. You said for the truck, we would be going to a bank for a rate, and we've talked about the bond rate being 1 point something.
4 or 5.
1 point. What's the differential there? What's the difference? I mean, it's our money we're spending.
Yeah.
If it's cheaper to go to a bond, how much more expensive is it to go to a bank?
Banks usually we can get between 2.5 to 3. It depends. It depends on who we look at, but we do go out to like 4 or 5 different banks. So we'll go with the lowest rate. But at 1.45 also, let me just check one thing, Larry, okay?
For example, in exploring the fire truck option, Lawrence, we were offered rates about 3% from banks. So it hovers.
It does.
You know, the other thing is that 1.45% is not guaranteed, as I said. So, you know, that as the Australian ballot states, it's at a rate of up to 2%. We sort of basically figured that was kind of the cutoff where we felt we were likely to get a bond issued, and or where the cumbersome aspects of financing through the bond bank, and it entails expenses too. We have to have legal counsel when we go to the bond bank, et cetera. So I don't have the math on that as far as this truck is concerned, but the thinking was that we were likely to just not realize a whole lot of savings for a short-term low-interest bond or a short-term low-interest bank loan on a borrowing of this size.
Larry, I did request that information too from Vermont Municipal Bond Bank, you know, on 190,000, and I have it in an email, so I will forward that information to you. And I don't remember what the rate was, but I think it was higher than the 1.45%.
As it would be for a shorter term bond.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Does that answer your questions for now? And right. Are there any other questions? Is there anybody who wishes to speak against Article 7? It appears that we may be able to move towards a vote. We are now, yes? A question?
My name is Amanda Perez. So this is related with this truck and the purchase of the fire truck, which is separate, but it seems like there's a capital plan for replacing vehicles with new vehicles, and that there seems to be a plan in place that is requiring the board to replace these things on this specific timeline. And then there also seems to be the question that you're holding in the back of your mind about changing that plan. Yep, because maybe to get some more longevity out of the vehicles and things like that. Yet we seem to be moving forward with the plan without looking at that. And so I'm wondering, what is the board's timeline for looking at those plans that are driving these mandates for buying new vehicles?
Is there somebody who can answer Amanda's question?
Well, I can't answer the question of what the timeline is, but we've been talking about it a lot. I know, I think it's part of a bigger question. I think the town of Putney and the people in it have gotten used to a really high level of services, and our taxes are really high. I know I pay a ton of taxes, so I'm wearing two hats right now. I'm on the select board, and I'm a taxpayer. And I wish Brian was here and he could speak to the condition of that truck so we could more accurately assess whether or not we actually need one right now, because I drive a 94 Toyota pickup with over 300,000 miles, and I haven't made payments on it in a really long time. So I'm in favor of keeping everything as long as we possibly can until the maintenance and repairs are less than what it's going to take to replace it. But that's going to require people being okay with their roads not being plowed right now if one of the trucks goes down and they don't get their road plowed for some hours, or it doesn't get sanded, which I'm fine with, but I'm not sure everybody else is. So we're looking at that. How is it going to work? How long is it going to take for us to save money to be able to outright buy a fire truck or outright buy the next replacement town truck? I don't know. It certainly would require the budget to stay the same, and whatever money we spent towards payments would go into a capital fund. And like Josh says, we're not making any money really. We can't really invest it in a way where we make very much money, but my opinion is I would lean in that direction. But like I said, I wish Brian was here to talk about the condition of that truck so he could answer those questions. I don't know what the timeline is for changing that. I know I think about it every day.
I would say the timeline from my perspective would be, as we just mentioned, the next truck coming up in line for replacement is 2023. So that gives us a 3-year window to look at, and that's also probably a reasonable window, as we were talking before about interest rates. You know, just looking at sort of the financial picture right now, it doesn't appear they're going to jump right away, and in fact may decrease for a period of time in the short run, but in a 3-year window they might well start climbing back up. So I guess I would propose that as a timeline, that within the next 3 years we're looking at this. You know, as David pointed out, and I've said this in the past too, we can make that choice to have potentially less services for less money. That's a voter choice, and I don't think anybody opposes that on this board, or probably anybody in town, but it's also a reality that we've come to be used to. I mean, you know, as soon as a road isn't sanded, we start getting phone calls. So, you know, that there's a balance there for us as to what we do. The reality, I mean, there's two components in my view of the thinking behind why we replace trucks on the timeline that we do. One is their trade-in value, and two is their dependability. You know, could we extend that to 12 or 15 years and not suffer dramatically in that realm? I'm sure the dealerships would tell us no, but you know, that's something we could experiment with, and maybe that would make sense for us to experiment with. Is that going to save us a fortune? No, but it will shave down the expenses on a capital plan. So I would say a 3-year window to look at that and see before we come before you with another truck is probably realistic.
Is there anybody who wishes to speak against Article 7? Then it looks like we may be ready to go to a vote. We are now voting on Article 7 to see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to borrow an amount not to exceed $190,000 to purchase a dump truck for the highway department to be repaid by a promissory note with a term of not more than 5 years. All those in favor of Article 7, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please indicate by saying nay.
Nay.
It appears that the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and Article 7 passes. It's now 5 noon. It might be time to take a break, I'm thinking, for lunch. If everyone's all right, I propose that we take a 45-minute recess We are returning to Town Meeting 2020.
I'm going to take a pause.
Maybe once again, we could just introduce who is on the stage.
Okay.
Just because if they start to hear official voices, they may return. Karen, would you mind introducing yourself once again? I was just going to go down and ask people to reintroduce themselves.
Oh, yes.
Karen Astley, Town Manager.
Josh Laughlin, Select Board Chair.
Laura Chapman, Select Board Vice Chair.
David Babbitt, Select Board Clerk.
And to my left, we have Kim Monroe, who is Assistant Town Clerk. I'm Meg Mott. I'm the moderator.
We're going to need to get them to shut up right there.
Okay, we're going to begin with Article 8 to see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to borrow an amount not to exceed $103,000 to install a new vehicle exhaust system for 13 emergency vehicles located at the fire department to be repaid by a promissory note with a term of not more than 5 years. Do we have a motion? Alan Blood. Do we have a second? Alice Mays. It has been moved and seconded, Article 8. I gather there may be a amendment?
There is.
What is your amendment?
Actually, can you maybe you can't because you're not a resident.
Right.
So, sorry.
Right here.
Okay.
So we're waiting to hear what
Sorry.
the amendment
So
is to Article 8.
The amendment, Article 8, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to borrow an amount not to exceed $103,000 to install a new vehicle exhaust system for 8, it should read 8, not 13, emergency vehicles located at the fire department to be paid.
Do we have a second for the amendment? The second is Alan Blood. It has been moved and seconded, and we are now discussing the amendment. Would somebody like to speak on behalf of the amendment?
Tom?
Well, it was just a mistake. We had it as 13. I mean, the way these systems work is that there's basically a central exhaust fan unit, and then they have what are called drop downs, which are pipes that come down and plug onto the exhaust systems of the vehicles. And we don't need 13, so that might be excessive.
That was my error.
But we do need 8, and that will improve safety in the fire department dramatically for all of the folks who work there, spend time there.
Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment? It looks like we may be, yes? We have a question or a speaking against? I don't know where our microphone went. The stand,
It's right here.
do we know where it is?
Right here.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you to Steve Voorhees for providing sound year after year after year. Thank you very much. And for coming up with the solution now that we don't have runners. Yeah. Things have changed, people. It's 2020. It's not on, but Steve seems to be working at the back. Can we try it now, Steve? Oh,
Yes.
yep, it works. Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that there are 2 reasons for the, I wasn't able to get the microphones running, but I've been worried about microphones being passed around as a vector. We do have handy wipes here if you're concerned about touching surfaces. It is flu season. It's not just the Coriolis virus that we have to worry about. And these are things that I hadn't really thought about until 2 mornings ago, and I woke up, what about and I was listening to the news, and I started maybe I should be a little bit more conscious. So anyway, you don't have to touch this, but if you are willing to and pick it out, if you're tall, as I am not, you may take it out. Handy wipes there if you want to.
Thank you.
Okay.
Put the debris on the chair.
So the debris from the handy wipes should just go on the chair next to the handy wipes. Okay. So we're discussing the amendment, and we have a question or comment?
Yes,
Question.
I'm Kate Dodge. I'm just wondering if it's 8 instead of 13, does that bring the price down?
No.
No.
No, it was just a mistake on the
Okay. Darn.
Yes. And the other thing I'll say, just so people know, one of the discussions that came up when we were talking about this was whether there was grant money available towards this. And the answer is no, there is not grant money, but we did explore it. But Tom is fairly confident that because the state of Vermont houses a hazmat response vehicle in our department, that the state is likely to contribute the cost of one of those drops for us as we go forward.
So we're still discussing the amendment. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the amendment? It looks like we may be ready to vote on the amendment. Yes, Robin. Question, we'll take that to the mic.
Robin Ekstrom.
Why does that happen? I never understand.
Okay.
Gun shy?
Did you hear that, David?
I just wondered what the existing system is. Thank you.
As it is right now, we have, I believe, 3 fans, Tom, that are mounted basically just as fans for the whole space that get turned on as exhaust fans. Not really a system. Something that is better than nothing, I guess, but really doesn't remove specifically exhaust. It just pulls out all the air. It's expensive to run something like that because it cools the whole place down. The idea of these is that they really pick it up right at the source and take it right out.
So I'm going to say, yes, let's resolve the amendment issue, and then we can have a broader discussion. So I'm going to say, are we ready to vote on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment, which is inserting 8 where it did say 13, all those in favor of changing the language to 8 emergency vehicles, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. It appears that the ayes have it and the amendment passes. We are now discussing Article 8 as amended. Are there any questions or comments about Article 8 as amended? Yes.
Alan Blood. I just need a clearer picture of the purpose. My understanding so far is this is so they can run the vehicles inside without asphyxiating themselves.
Correct.
And they really need to run the vehicles inside.
Well, the way the system I designed, in a variety of instances, yes, for maintenance purposes, particularly in winter. I mean, you don't want to take one of those vehicles out, park it outside in the winter and run it. But also the way, I believe, Tom, this has automatic drops, is that right? So that essentially it's connected to the vehicle at all times. You start the vehicle, and as you pull out, it automatically sort of spits the tube off the exhaust, so that you're really minimizing as much as you possibly can. Because as you know, I mean, if not all of them, almost all of them are diesel vehicles, and even just starting a diesel with an engine that size in that space. And Tom did some non-scientific research by placing gear out and keeping an eye on the volume of particulate that was adding up on it, and it's not good. And the data is very clear that this is very helpful in keeping interior spaces, but also from a maintenance issue, just the ability to do maintenance on the vehicles and run them inside is important in the winter. So,
Do we have any other questions about Article 8? I don't know if we actually had somebody speak on behalf of Article 8. We moved quickly into the amendment. Is there somebody who wishes to speak on behalf of Article 8?
I would just say that from safety of our public safety personnel, this is an important thing for us to do. Again, when you start those engines up in that enclosed space, it's not good for anybody. I think that it's a relatively small price to pay to keep the environment for the firefighters and emergency medical folks to have a cleaner environment inside the station.
Is there anybody who wishes to speak against Article 8? The motion on the table has happened. It was moved and seconded, and then it was amended. Thank you for that question, though. Is there anybody who wishes to speak against Article 8 as amended? It looks as if we are ready to move to a vote. We are now voting on Article 8 as amended. I will read it. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to borrow an amount not to exceed $103,000 to install a new vehicle exhaust system for 8 emergency vehicles located at the fire department to be repaid by a promissory note with a term of not more than 5 years. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. It appears that the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and Article 8 passes. We are now moving on to Article 9, to see if the town will vote to authorize the establishment of a gravel pit blasting reserve fund to be used for payment of blasting-related services and equipment at the jointly owned gravel extraction site in Dummerston, Vermont. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Josh.
Do we have a second? Melody. I should know your name, sorry. Do you have her last name? It has been moved and seconded with Article 9. Does anybody wish to speak on behalf of Article 9?
Do you want to address it, Karen? No? Okay. Either of you guys want to talk to this one? Basically, it's going to cost us in the realm of $60,000 every 3 years. Is that right? Per town. I don't have that number in front of me, but I believe we're looking at. Well, this is the total for the 2 towns over.
No.
That's ours over how many years?
5.
In a 5-year period, every 5 years, we will be looking at roughly $90,000 in expenditure for blasting purposes. And that is, the town of Dummerston would also be paying that equal amount, so $180,000 every 5 years in order to basically remove the amount of ledge product we need to allow it to be processed for our needs for road work. So this is just a way to, instead of having a $90,000 whack every 5 years,
Right.
put in $18,000 a year into a reserve fund in order to prepare for that.
Do we have any questions? Does anybody wish? Any questions? Yes, in the back, let's say.
Hi, Lisa Papazian. I'm just wondering how many years we expect to have in the gravel pit with the blasting schedule.
Yeah, a lot. 30 plus years. I mean, the break where we start to come out ahead is where we currently get our sand from, which is the Carpenter Pit. When we retire the Carpenter Pit, then we will stop paying out as much money for gravel-related product. I mean, that's sand, not gravel. But at that point, our payment decreases because it doesn't decrease, but we're paying, instead of paying it for sand to an independent private owner, we're paying it into our own system. But we anticipate at least 30 years. That's a conservative estimate. Depending on how we use ledge product and availability of other sand, it's very hard to define exactly the parameters of the stone within the gravel pit. But we actually think probably if we do it well and we're able to lower the pit floor in the future, which is an amendment of Act 250, we're probably looking at more like 50 to 60 years of use from the gravel pit. So blasting would be, we won't do that any more than we have to, but we're assuming that we'll need blast product every 5 years.
Are there other questions? I think Lawrence, did you have your hand? You're fine. Eva?
Yes.
I'd like to thank the select board for bringing the idea of buying that gravel pit, which there was a lot of discussion about at town meeting, was brilliant, and all around the towns are suffering now. In Westminster, there was a major fight. They don't know what to do. So I want to thank you all for the good work you put and the way you educated us about getting that gravel pit from Renos with Dummerston. So thank you all.
We hope that it will be a wise investment.
It will be.
Are there any other questions about Article 9 on the gravel pit? Is there anybody who wishes to speak against Article 9? It looks like we may be heading towards a vote. We are now voting. Oh, Elizabeth, did you have a question or no? All right, so we are going to vote on Article 9 to see if the town will vote to authorize the establishment of a gravel pit blasting reserve fund to be used for payment of blasting-related services and equipment at the jointly owned gravel extraction site in Dummerston, Vermont. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. It appears that the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and Article 9 passes. We are now moving on to Article 10. To see if the town will vote to transfer $18,000 from the highway capital budget to the gravel pit blasting reserve fund, if established by Article 9. It appears that that language is true. Do I have a motion? Lawrence. Do we have a second? Melody. Article 10 has been moved and seconded. We are now discussing Article 10. Does somebody wish to speak in favor of it?
I will just comment that, as is sort of implied, but just so it's completely clear, the establishment of a reserve fund means that that money can only be used for the purpose that it's designated for. So that was the reason we have two articles, is one, to establish that we are going to have that fund. Two is to put some money into it so it actually has money to be spent on that purpose.
Okay, do we have any questions? Yes.
Alan Blood, can you just explain why this is a good source of the money from the capital fund rather than raising new money or taking it from somewhere else, taking it from the highway capital budget?
Does anybody have an answer for Alan?
Very basically, we had somewhat of a highway surplus last year, so it's money that's available to us without taking it from elsewhere where it would add to taxes. So that's about it.
Does that answer your question? Yeah. Do we have any other questions with respect to Article 10? Does anybody wish to speak against Article 10? It looks as if we're about to vote on Article 10. We are now voting on Article 10 to see if the town will vote to transfer $18,000 from the highway capital budget to the gravel pit blasting reserve fund, if established by Article 9. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. It appears that the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and Article 10 passes. We are now moving to Article 11, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,415,587 to defray its expenses and liabilities for the town general fund, ensuing fiscal year July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. You can find that information on pages 46 to 47 in your town report. Do we have a motion? Do we have a motion? Melody's motion. Do we have a second? Janice Baldwin, second. It has been moved and seconded on Article 11. Would somebody now speak on behalf of Article 11?
I just want a point of clarification. This does not include, if Article 2 is approved by Australian ballot, it does not include a payment towards that bond. That is because the way the cycle of bond funding works in the state, we would not have a payment due on that until fiscal 21-22. But it does include the $103,000 that we voted on in Article 8, which, yes.
Are there any questions? Eva? Sorry.
Must be added to it afterwards, I think.
Turn to page 46, yes?
Once again, I question why CERVA, or whatever it's called, if you look down on page 46, Intergovernmental Agency Assessment, and then you look across the way at, let me see, not across the way, where, yeah. Where are the, I didn't bring my glasses up here. The money that's spent for community projects, what's it called?
CEVEDS.
Yeah, no, but in comparison to what the community center gets or the food shelf gets, why is it that they get so much more money and they don't draw money from all the towns around? They do a few towns, but not all the towns that they serve. And it used to be, it was in the articles, and then last year it popped up here stated as a permanent kind of, let's give them 8,000. No, let's don't give them 8,000. Let's give them half that or less. If those organizations in the community should have the 8,000. I mean, I'm totally opposed to this. I was last year and I carried on for half an hour. I want to sit down now. But think about it, folks.
Eva, do you want to make an amendment?
Yes, thank you for your help. I'd like to make an amendment that we cut that in half.
So we're now, if everyone is looking at page 46.
Sorry.
I just want to make sure that we follow this through, and I need
Thank
a
you.
second as well. So the amount that is currently listed there is 8,106.
Yes.
Is that correct? And so, Eva, would your amendment then be for 4,053? Is that correct, Eva?
Sounds good to me. My glasses are back there.
Yeah, sorry, we're having to do this. So
Okay.
we have an amendment on the floor. Do we have a second? Janice Baldwin has seconded Eva's amendment. We are now discussing the amendment, and that would reduce the overall amount by $4,053.
This is not to be confused with SEFCA. This is another organization that bloomed some years ago, and I question their ability to do the job they claim they're doing.
So we have the amendment on the floor. Is there somebody who, and Eva just spoke in favor of the amendment, is there somebody who wishes to speak against the amendment? We got a second. Yes, and I think it was Janice Baldwin. So we are discussing the amendment which would reduce the overall budget by $4,053, and this is by cutting in half the SEVID's appropriation.
Can I make a suggestion, Meg? It seems to me that it would be appropriate to have a discussion about SEVEDs and the service they provide before we have a discussion about an amendment, because otherwise if we amend it and then have a discussion, so my recommendation would be we table the amendment, have a discussion about SEVEDs, the organization, and why we contribute money to them, and then we go back to the amendment.
I'm not sure we can table, because we have our amendment on the floor and it's seconded. I want to refer to the parliamentarian Howard Fairman. Do you need to go to the mic, Howard?
Probably not. Discussion is in order. The discussion we propose is in order as part of the discussion of the amendment.
Okay, that's the other way we can do it. I just think it would not do service to the greater discussion of the article if we amend it without there being discussion about the article itself. So as long as the moderator applies that.
Yeah, so what I'm suggesting is we are now deliberating on the amendment. As part of the deliberation against the amendment, a person could argue in favor of the full amount for SEVID. So I think that the amending process will allow for the kind of conversation we want to have. I have a hand from the select board.
I would like to hear from Karen Astley, our town manager, on what services SEVID does provide to us and how useful she has or has not found them over her tenure with us.
Well, I can answer. They're a great resource for our office. I thought there was going to be somebody
There is,
from
RT.
Would you like to?
And RT, am I saying your name correctly? Yes. RT, and you're not a Putney resident? Correct. Well, hearing no objections, I am going to allow RT to answer that question about what are the services that SEVID's applies. Yeah, but Alan Blood is asking to go back to Karen. If you could fill out the information and then...
Sure. So again, I reach out to SEVID's along with BDCC, and they're very instrumental with economic development and also placing kids into work programs. Being up here for my second year, I've heard from folks in town where both organizations have helped them tremendously. So new businesses, small businesses, this is the type of resource that we can tap into. And any $100, it is, a lot of money, but the payback's going to be even greater. So whenever I have a question or I need something, I pick up the phone and they're right there. And I also recommend property owners with businesses, vacant buildings, to contact them directly and work with them, because they can support them with grant money and other businesses to possibly come into Putney. So they are a good resource.
Because I had asked, hearing no objections to inviting RT in, I want to make sure, Alan, was that an objection to inviting him in, or are you? Timing-wise, okay. So if I hear no objections, then Artie, if you wish to come forward to the mic to describe your work.
Thank you. Hi, folks. I see some familiar faces. It's good to see you. I want to start by thanking the Select Board for the good work they do throughout the year, for the moderator and the town manager. My name is R.T. Brown, and I'm here to talk about the organization Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies, or SEVEDS. So SEVEDS leads with strategy and insights. It's an organization made up of volunteers who serve on a board, and it's charged with creating the region's economic development roadmap. And it's a federally approved document called a Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, or CEDS. We love our acronyms, so if I use one, please stop me. So the CEDS is created through a series of public information sessions, and that helps inform its strategies, goals, and objectives. CEDS then contracts with the BDCC, or the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation, to operationally fulfill those objectives and strategies by developing and building programs, and then going out and seeking funding for those programs. So that's why I'm here today. CEDS requests municipal dollars and uses them as leverage to gain more funding from state and federal sources to extend the impact. So why $3? So we request that $8,100 comes from a $3 per registered voter request. To be honest, this is my 4th year being here. I think early on the organization didn't quite know what to ask. But now we're a bit more mature, and through modeling, we have come to understand that $3, it's like the cost of a breakfast sandwich and a coffee. It's really a sweet spot, because we take that $3 and we leverage it and get, we quadruple it, really. So anything less than $3, we're not as able to extend our impact. Anything more is probably just too much. The focus is regional. For example, around 700 people leave the town of Putney every day to go to work. People need employment opportunities so they can pay their bills. They need to be able to put food on the table. They need to pay taxes. They need to be able to go to the general store. They need to be able to patron anecdote books, and to support the other dearly regarded human service organizations that support the town. Meaningful work in the region is paramount. We have programs in the high schools that help kids understand what opportunities are here. We help them with resume writing, mock interviews, and help them understand the skills that are needed to work at some of the region's employers. Since September, there have been 10 field trips, dozens of classes, and work with 300 individual students. That program is a perfect example of how municipal funds are leveraged to build a program. Our internship helps connect college-enrolled students or recent graduates with paid internship programs. My area of focus happens to be entrepreneurship and small business development services. And we have a program that helps bring training and professional development to town leaders and nonprofits. On Saturday, I was in Westminster. They elected to reduce the funding. I'm a little bolder, I'm a little older. I'll tell you that the result of that, the reason why that happened is somebody stood up and, I would say, mischaracterized our work, our level of engagement. And I was sitting next to Christy, my colleague, who does that work, and she literally started to shake. And in this type of setting, it's very difficult to refute that kind of information that's put out there. So they elected not to fund us. Last night, I was in Rockingham. CEDS was funded fully, and today, as far as we know, as far as I know so far today, Newfane, Londonderry, Guilford, Weston, and Grafton have approved full funding for CEDS. So that comes to last year it was about 75% of the region has supported the work. So previously I mentioned, providing support by building vibrancy in businesses. Oftentimes people need sort of a dollar for dollar understanding of what's the impact for Putney. So this year alone, our projects have provided grants to businesses. It's associated with a revolving loan program. One of them is the Putney General Store. So Mike is here. Not to put him on the spot, but he'd be happy to talk about what we've done to support that transition. But total in grant technical assistance dollars was $6,500. So we're asking for $8,100. We put $6,500 back to area businesses. And then that doesn't even include my time with business advising or the tools that I provide to businesses. So if I look at that, we're probably easily at the ask that we're making today. Towns can't do this alone. The good people behind me have a bunch of things to do and to think about. Economic development may come up from time to time, but that's not their primary job, and that's the role of CEVEDS. It's similar to the Wyndham Regional Commission. It's been funded by municipalities for decades. So I want to wrap up by quoting somebody at the Westminster Town Meeting. And the quote is, "There's only one county in the state, Chittenden County, where births exceed deaths. We are losing population. We must do work to at least maintain where we are now. We must attract millennials who are looking to move out of cities. We must attract new Americans. We must help businesses so that residents can pursue opportunities to positively impact their lives, to pay local taxes, and we must do the work in our schools so that young folk know opportunities for good-paying, truly interesting jobs do exist in the region." So thank you for your time. I'm happy to respond to any questions when and if appropriate, and Mike is also here to talk about his experience with us.
Okay, thank you. So that was hearing against the amendment. Is there somebody who wishes to speak in favor of the amendment? So that was against the amendment. The amendment is to reduce the amount paying to CEVEDS by $4,053. Is there somebody who wishes to speak in favor of the amendment? It looks like we may be ready to vote on the amendment. Mike Mrowicki, yes. Can you go to the mic, please? I can't hear what you're saying.
Mike, do you still live in Putney? Do you need to be invited into this part? Do you still live in? I did.
Okay,
sorry.
This is called like after lunch, everybody's being the
You were sitting over
moderator.
there, so I wondered why.
Okay, Mike, we're focusing on you.
So,
you live in Montpelier now, don't you, Mike?
just to,
Sorry.
I'm not going to argue how much we should give them or not, but I do want to share that there's a lot of work that they do that's valid. And one of the things that was brought up was the idea of economic development. We're one of the few small villages now that still has a village center. And it's some of the work of CEVEDS and BDCC is why it's happening. The other piece that I want to add is looking ahead to what they're trying to do. Now, many of you are aware of the Community Asylum Seeker Project. This is a group started by Steve and Laurel Green to help people get out of the detention centers on the border. And they need sponsors. And what CASP does is it brings people, finds sponsors, and raises the money. Why this is getting to be an involvement of CEVEDS is we need workers in Vermont. We need population. And we're looking to try and create a collaboration so we can bring people, new Americans, skilled people, people ready to work to Vermont and get them out of the detention centers, what they call the refrigerators. This is a project that's happening now that CEVEDS is putting themselves into, first of all, because it's the right thing and there's some economic benefits that can accrue out of it. So that's just another thing. They do some good work here. I'm not going to argue one way or another how much you want to fund them, but I think it's a good idea for us to fund them.
Okay, so that was another against the amendment. Is there somebody who wishes to speak for the amendment, or yes, or has a question? Yes, a question.
So this is listed under BDC.
Can you just say your name again?
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Kate Dodge.
Thank you.
It's listed on our annual report under BDCC rather than CEVEDS.
No.
No?
No.
That's what it looked like to me.
No.
Page
46.
What about 54?
It's a line item. 54 is probably the social services budget, I would guess.
Yeah, but if you look at their report, I get it. But their report on page, 35, says Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation, right here.
Right.
They're affiliated with one another.
Well, here's the question so is this money going through BDCC? Is that why, or does it go directly to SEVEDS? I'm not sure I understand that, and the reason I'm asking that is that we as Putney Mountain Winery have been very much helped by BDCC before SEVEDS existed. So my guess is that some of that has gone into SEVEDS. I'm not sure we'd be in existence without them.
Is it all right if he comes forward to answer that question? Yes.
Thank you for the question. And the relationship is confusing. So SEVEDS has a board but no staff. It's a volunteer board and contracts with the BDCC, I think I said earlier, to operationally fulfill those goals and objectives. So SEVEDS sort of sets the roadmap. BDCC then says, okay, well, we need to develop this program and this program and this program. So all the activities pretty much at the BDCC are informed and steered by the work of SEVEDS.
Okay, great. Is there anybody who wishes to speak in favor of the amendment? In favor of the amendment? No. Do you have a question? Sally.
Hi, my name's Sally Fletcher. I've lived here for like 15 years, and I understand that SEVEDS and BDCC are really looking to like bring young people into Vermont, which I totally support, and I get that they're working with like kids who are like about to enter the workforce, but I'm just kind of wondering what supports that like corporation or whatever and Putney as a whole are really like offering to young people who are already in the workforce, because it seems a little silly to me to be like trying to draw people from outside when Vermont is losing a lot of its young people because these opportunities aren't really being made to us.
Would you like to answer that question? Great.
Yeah, I think I neglected to mention one of our programs. It's the Young Professionals Organization. So my colleague who runs that likes to say, you know, you may have a bunch of friends, but if you don't have a job, you're probably not going to stay. Or if you have a job, but you don't have any friends, it's probably not likely that you're going to stay. So the Young Professionals Organization sort of combines that professional aspect along with the social aspect. There's a gala that's coming up in early April. I recommend that you go. There's like 300 people that go every year, and I'm amazed when I go because I look around and say, where did all these young folks come from? So, you know, young professionals do practical workshops, and there was one in Putney, I think a home buying seminar, but then they do every month a social thing throughout the region. So we do have activity. You know, the program in the high schools is really to try to connect students that, whether they're leaving for college or not leaving for college, you know, we just want them to know that there are really interesting jobs here. If you're an engineer, a mechanical engineer, a chemical engineer, those jobs exist here, but oftentimes people don't understand it and understand that they exist. So that's hopefully answering the question about how we serve the folks that are here.
RT, can I ask you to just clarify, if somebody who was in Sally's position was looking for assistance from you, did she contact you directly? How would that work?
She could contact me, and I would connect her with my colleague Sarah Lang, who runs the Young Professionals Organization.
So young individuals are able to contact SEVEDS directly if they need individual help. Thank you.
Okay, we're discussing the amendment. Is there anybody who wants to speak in favor of the amendment? Maybe we're ready to vote on the amendment. This is just going to take a little bit of math on my part. The amendment would reduce the amount to be raised and appropriated from what's stated right now, $1,415,587, and we would need to subtract 4,053. My math tells me that the amendment would drop the number to 1,411,534. Does that math correct? Okay. So we're going to vote on the amendment now, which would now, I'm going to read it as the amended article. So I'm going to read the article with the change. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,411,534 to defray its expenses and liabilities for the town general fund ensuing fiscal year July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. All those in favor of the amendment, please indicate by saying aye. All those opposed, please indicate by saying nay.
Nay.
It appears that the nays have it. The nays have it, and the amendment does not pass. We are now going back to Article 11 to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,415,587 to defray its expenses and liabilities for the town general fund ensuing fiscal year July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. We have moved and seconded that, so we're fine on that score. Do we have anybody who wishes to speak to this motion? Article 11. Lawrence.
Lawrence O'Neill, I have a question with regard to the general fund notes. It is unclear to me what reflects increase, open parentheses, Tom Goddard, close parentheses, elimination of 80 hours per year compensation time. We're increasing the elimination of something?
And that is on page 47 of the town report?
47, mid-page under general fund. Doesn't make sense to me.
Is there anybody here who can answer Lawrence's question?
I can clarify that for you, Lawrence. So Tom is a salary employee, and so any overtime was being compensated, and he could only earn up to 80 hours per year for compensation. So the amount of hours that Tom actually puts in, there's no way he was using the compensation, nor was he able to use his vacation time that he was accruing. So we took the 80 hours at his hourly rate and we put it into his salary. So he is no longer accruing 80 hours a year. The other thing with that accrual for the compensation time, he was going to have to use that by the end of the year or he would have lost it. So it actually didn't make sense for him to be doing that.
Does that make that clear? So essentially what we had was a budget item that allowed us to pay Tom for 80 hours of comp time.
Correct.
We eliminated that part of the budget and just added that number to his salary line item. So you're right, the wording is awkward, but it's actually accurate that it does reflect elimination of 80 hours, but that relates to an increase in salary. Is the net effect zero? Because we've increased the salary line items as well. So
right. So it's $2,180.
Is what we eliminated?
Yes. No.
That's what we added to his salary.
Correct.
Correct. So is it actually zero? I'm not sure, but that's the thought behind it. Yes.
Correct.
Can you just, could somebody restate Lawrence's last question?
Lawrence stated that we were eliminating payment for comp time, and that is correct, but we are increasing salary in return for that, essentially. It's a way to ensure that Tom gets paid for the many hours that he spends that he can't otherwise necessarily get paid for as reflected in comp time hours.
And it also gives him the opportunity to take his vacation time, which I encourage very much.
Are there any other questions about the general fund budget? Janice?
This is just Janice Baldwin, a general question, and maybe if I studied the budget more carefully, I could answer it myself. But I noticed that some town budgets, some departments have a surplus, or they didn't use all the money that was allocated to them. I'm wondering what happens to that extra money that the taxpayers have been taxed on. Does that just go into a general fund, or does it go back to that department, or whatever? Thank you.
Do you want to answer that?
Does anybody have an answer for Janice?
I do.
Yeah.
So surplus funds, and we're talking about general fund right now. So rule of thumb is to hold between 8% and 12% of your operating budget, okay? So from the audit from this past year, we do have a surplus of $80,000, which we added to a previous surplus for the general fund. So right now we have a surplus of about $125,000. Now, if we had an emergency, we could use that money. So if we start putting it into reserve and something happens, we may not have it. So that money it's there for emergency, but again, rule of thumb is between 8 and 12%.
So, just to add to that, the other thing we could do with that money is put it back into the budget, not as surplus, and it would then defray or lower the amount of taxes needed to be collected in the next year. It's essentially a small savings account. We tend to historically run a small budget surplus. That's not true every year, but it's true most years, and we tend to let that build just so that we have a little bit of a buffer. But we could choose also, it's at the select board's discretion to choose how we spend that money in any given year. This year we chose to keep it as a reserve fund, essentially.
Did that answer your question? Yeah. Are there other questions about Article 11? Yes. Kate.
Kate Dodge. I'm just trying to remember, I was looking at the social services budget. How do we determine B and C? Is that evidence-based, or is that just we think some are more important in Putney than others?
The way the social service budget, B and C, is volume, sorry, A, as you know, is Putney-based organizations. B are organizations that provide a certain, it's evidence-based, but it's evidence-based on the information that they provide to us. So it's level of service, essentially, is the difference between B and C. And, we certainly have access to information that would allow for accountability if we needed it. But basically, they provide us every year with a report on the volume of service, and that determines level B or level C.
Can I add that?
Yeah.
Can I add that the select board has been talking a lot about this formula this past year, and going into the future, we're going to continue revisiting it and possibly revamp it.
And one of the things we've been talking about, as you all may recall from last year, was the fact that Putney Community Cares was formed, and they used to be two different entities that got two allocations, which is why they have two allocations in Section A this year, because the level of services that they provide. Our policy on social services distribution does not allow for that. So that's something we've been discussing, trying to figure out how to change that. So we will probably move to some form of volume of services provided allocation within Section A or something. We're not quite clear on that, but it's in discussion.
Any other questions on Article 11? In the back, Ruby. And then Lawrence.
Ruby McAdoo. I guess I had a question. I have two questions actually, and I'm assuming this is for Karen. On page 46, I didn't understand, or I don't understand what the recreation coordinator is. So there's that. That's question A. And question B has to do with the pool revenue and expenses. And I guess my initial comment is that I recognize, and I've always recognized as a Putney person, that the cost of running that pool exceeds what you bring in. And as someone who is a parent who is at the pool every day in the summer and also sees how many people benefit from that, I've always appreciated that this town supports young families, also people who don't have kids, who do laps in the evening. There's a regular usage, and that's a resource in our town that is immense. So I guess that's my comment. My question is that I see that there's a pretty substantial increase in terms of the pool fees and membership. Do you have a plan to increase how much is asked per family or per person, or what is that variance?
So we just had an increase last year, Ruby, and we don't intend to increase it again. So what we're going to do too is take a look at, and you're absolutely right, because the revenue that's coming in doesn't offset the operation of the pool. But as a resource, we plan on looking at that and evaluating it. And there are grants out there that we can improve. You know, we talk about the slide. It's working so far, but that's a $12,000 ticket, So we're gonna go and reevaluate the pool this year. The thing with the pool too is that because of minimum wages keep going up, and we don't really know how many lifeguards we're gonna have and how many hours they're gonna put in. So that's always a bouncing ball, but I'm just happy that we can get lifeguards, and Beverly Wright does a wonderful job coordinating all of that. Plus the swim lessons too. It's very important for families. So we're gonna be revisiting the whole pool, and give me a year, okay? Because yeah, it does need some TLC.
And the recreation coordinator, what's that one?
So the recreation coordinator right now is a vacant position. There is a rec league committee, and so they coordinate like soccer tournaments and the baseball, and the snack shack out here at the school. So
so that's the Putney Rec League. That's
correct.
What that represents. Okay.
And they get a stipend too to coordinate all that. So it's just basically for recreation for the community, so families can have a place for their kids to be active. So
Great.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? We had Lawrence had his hand up, and then Jamie Quantra, or Jamie, do you want to come up front? Yep.
I'll also just put in a plug again for your returnable 5-cent bottles and cans to go to work for the town for the pool budget down at Town Hall.
Jamie Comtois, Putney. I just wanted to say Karen has seen me, I think, when did you first come on staff?
I've been here 2.5 years, 2 years in the front office.
So I think your predecessor and now you every year have had me visiting you because I knew my 6-year-old was going to want to use that slide at the pool.
It was unsafe.
And at the time, he was 3 when I started asking because I knew this day was coming.
Yeah.
And so Karen knows that I'm ready. I know Ruby's ready. And so all of you in town should be ready for a GoFundMe to go out because $12,000 plus, I think Karen said last time we chatted, there's other updates that need to happen.
There are other improvements.
Other
yes.
improvements. So the price tag will be over $12,000. So for those of you who don't want to wait till next town meeting, expect to get a GoFundMe request so that we can get our pool up to date, so the kids can go hog wild all summer, and you have happy local Vermont kids who want to stay in Vermont. And so anyways, we're ready.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lawrence, did you have your hand up? Just a reminder that we're discussing Article 11.
Lawrence O'Neill again. Karen, I guess this question is for you. The surplus you talked about running between 8 and 12% is the thumb. It seems we're running at about 8.5%, somewhere between 8 and 9. And you made a differentiation of the difference between the surplus and a reserve fund. Are they accessible differently? Are they earning different money? If that reserve fund, is it sitting somewhere earning differently than our surplus is earning if it's sitting in an account somewhere?
It's basically still in the general fund, Lawrence. So we do have a sweep account too. So we only hold so much in our actual checking account, and then the rest is up in the sweep account where it's making interest. So that money it's there. It's just kind of free floating. But the reserve fund though, that's designated monies, and as we just voted on the article, that's specific for some purpose. And the surplus money, as Josh stated, we can take a certain, amount and designate it as well. But right now, in the general fund, that money is in the checking account, in the sweep account, earning interest. It could be, but it would have to be discussed by the select board and approved.
And can you just restate Lawrence's last question?
The question was whether that money could be used for any purpose. So yes, it's not a designated fund, which is, as far as sort of emergency uses is concerned, is desirable to us.
Correct.
But we do keep it in the account. I mean, sort of needless to say, for an emergency situation, that money needs to be very liquid for us. So we keep it in an account that is minimally interest bearing, because that type of account is minimally interest bearing, but it's readily available at any time if we were to need it.
Are there any other questions or comments about Article 11? It looks like we may be ready to move to a vote. We are now voting on Article 11 to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,415,587 to defray its expenses and liabilities for the town general fund ensuing fiscal year July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. All those in favor of Article 1, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. It appears that the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and Article 11 passes. We are now moving on to Article 12, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,218,594 to defray its expenses and liabilities for the Highway Fund ensuing fiscal year July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. You can find out more information, pages 48 to 49 in your town report. Does anybody have any questions about Article 12, Highway Fund? Yes, Lawrence.
Everybody hear me if I stand up here?
That it's actually, if you could come forward, is because the television cameras.
There's plenty of empty seats in
And
the
I'm
front.
so sorry, I was just reminded, do we have a motion for Article 12?
So moved.
Lawrence moves it. Do we have a second for Article 12? We have Alan Blood, second. Thank you very much. Sorry about that.
Elizabeth, apologies for climbing over you again. I was just wondering if this budget for the highway fund includes service on the loan that we just voted on.
For the truck?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Okay, I couldn't find it.
Any other questions concerning the highway fund? It looks like we may be ready for a vote. Having moved and seconded and discussed Article 12, we are now ready to vote to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,218,594 to defray its expenses and liabilities for the highway fund, ensuing fiscal year July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. It appears that the ayes have it. Article 2 passes.
Article 12.
I'm sorry, Article 12 passes. I think I need some tea. We are now moving on to Article 13, to transact any other town business that may legally come before the annual town meeting. These are non-binding resolutions that appear at this point, and I have a stack of resolutions that have arrived. So I was going to deal with these in the order that people have brought them to me. So the first resolution that I have is from the Select Board. Sorry. Do we have copies of the different resolutions available for people?
Not this one, no.
Not this one. And I know you gave it to me just a little bit ago.
Do you want me to read it, Meg?
Here we have it. So the first resolution, I have a hand up first, yes.
Those of us who organize around the school, I just wanted to make sure people could hear some information about the school before we lost more folks. And I didn't know how long resolutions were going to take. Is there any way to have the school piece? Because there's just a couple pieces of the school piece.
So this is a great question. Jamie is asking about what we're going to do about the school information session. My inclination was to go through town meeting because right now we are on a specific article, and an article that was warned. At the end of Article 13, we would then adjourn town meeting, and immediately I would describe how there's an Australian ballot today that has to do with the Wyndham Southeast School District, and as part of that, we were going to offer for information about what's happening in the school and that. So that is why, because I'm still needing to move with the articles that were warned, I was going to postpone until after I adjourned town meeting to talk about the school. Yes, Jamie.
I was told there could just be announcements and other business, which I thought was Article 13.
Oh, okay.
So, Meg, I did tell her that, but as the moderator, I do believe you're...
Parliamentarian, yes.
This is a town meeting, so it's town business.
Yes.
The parliamentarian says it's a town meeting and therefore it's town business, and that actually completely conforms with my understanding as well. As you remembered from in the past, we adjourn one meeting and then we begin the other meeting. So that's my plan, is as soon as I can adjourn town meeting, then I will open it up for a discussion around school issues. So, here we go. The first resolution in front of us, yes, it is a non-binding resolution to be considered under other business about town-owned property, Putney Mountain. Would somebody on the select board be willing to read the language of the resolution?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, that's it. Yep. Go ahead.
Non-binding resolution to be considered under other business, town-owned property, Putney Mountain. Resolved, the Town of Putney Select Board seeks a non-binding consensus from the electorate on the questions of whether the Select Board should consider a gift or sale of approximately 49 acres of town forest in Putney and an additional 85 acres in Brookline, Putney Mountain, and be it further resolved that the Select Board perform a due diligence review to determine whether this property is a valuable asset for the community, and be it further resolved that this resolution does not bind or legally obligate the board to gift or sell this property.
So I believe I need a motion. Is there somebody who wishes to move this resolution? What is your name of the? Oh, Jordy Heller, of course, sorry. And do we have a second? Nancy Storrow. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Does somebody want to speak in favor of this resolution?
Richard Fletcher was going to speak.
Richard Fletcher? And then we'll get some other comments.
Richard Fletcher, and I'm a board member of the Putney Mountain Association. And the reason I'm also one of the committees I'm on is acquisition. So we've been approached by the Select Board several months ago about the possibility of us acquiring this acreage up on top of Putney Mountain and down into the Brookline area. So that's what I'm going to speak, and hopefully that we are very interested in this. This article is to investigate the worth of this property, and hopefully they'll feel that our organization is worthy of receiving this property. When I heard about this, heard about the Putney Town Forest, because I have not been here that long, only 34 years, and did not know what the Putney Town Forest was. A lot of people thought it was the school forest, and I think I did too, so I decided to do some research on this. And in 2005, there was a history about Putney Mountain Association, and it includes, talks about the Putney Town Forest. And so I'm going to give you a little brief history of that. And at the turn of the century, somebody owned this property, and it was bequeathed to the two daughters, and the two daughters split this 134 acres in the top of Putney Mountain, split between Brookline and Putney. And in 1930, one of the daughters gave half of the property to the town of Putney to do whatever they want with it. That was 1930. World War II came, and after World War II, 1946, the Putney Mountain Association was formed. And in 1947, the Putney Mountain Association purchased Flagpole Pasture, up on, which is now the summit of Putney Mountain, and we call it Putney Mountain Summit. But that was purchased. There used to be a flagpole up there many years ago. It was purchased by the Putney Mountain Association in 1947 for $500 with $22.50 in taxes. And it's 40 acres, and we own that property. In 1949, because of failure to pay Putney taxes, the second daughter relinquished her property to the town, most likely in lieu of those taxes. And so now the town of Putney has owned 134 acres on top of the mountain. Putney Mountain owned the top of the mountain, and to get to the top of the mountain, we had to travel through the town forest. Now, the town forest includes the whole parking area on top of the Putney Mountain parking area, the area where the kiosk is, the beginning of the trail, and some part going up the trail is all owned by the town forest. So shortly after, in 1949, the Putney Mountain Association started taking care of and managing, building trails, putting up kiosks, maintaining the driveway and the parking lot. And so we started, right when it was the same year that it was the whole parcel was owned by the town of Putney. Putney Mountain Association was involved. There's a couple of quotes. One quote from 1949 by the town. It says, "The town forest, including the parking area and trails, have been maintained by the Putney Mountain Association with occasional assistance from the Highway Department." And that was from a town quote that was in this historical. So we have continued to do that all these years. There's been fundraisers. There was some reports in this history that there were 200 people up on top of the mountain and having picnic. There were barbecue pits and all sorts of things up there, all for the enjoyment of the people of the town of Putney. And Putney Mountain Association was involved with that. Years went by, and we continued to maintain that and be stewards of that property without any costs to the town at all. Later on in 1984, there was another quote that said that the town was happily accepting the Putney Mountain Association's role as manager of the Putney Town Forest. So we're dedicated. Many years we've been doing that, and hopefully that this will go through. We'll find out what the due diligence means. I guess I have one question of what the Select Board hopes to identify from this due diligence examination of the property, and what do you want to do with that information? So,
yeah,
because this is an article for you to research. It's this is not a transfer of property or anything like that.
Yes, I think that a couple things came up that drove us to. I mean, there has been a movement by the Putney Mountain Association we first raised it. I know Richard and I had a conversation out of a meeting about it at some point. I think that was after it had already come up.
I didn't know how much I wanted to say, supposed to say about that.
Yeah, that's okay.
Richard, do you mind putting the mic back, just because it's much easier. We just have one person at a time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, a couple things that currently happen with it, just so people know, Putney Mountain Association, as Richard has accurately described, does maintain that parcel, or the portion of the parcel that requires maintenance. The rest of it is largely just untouched forest land. One of the due diligence questions that has come up to the Select Board is whether there's value in the timber stand that's there, and we recognize clearly that the value of standing trees is not insignificant in today's world. But as far as due diligence is concerned, if there's a large valuable stand of timber there, should the town consider that in their consideration of transferring the property? I think the general consensus on this board, and I'll speak for myself, but we've had this conversation in open session also, is that we think the Putney Mountain Association would be a great recipient for this. But we also have an obligation, fiduciary and otherwise, to the townspeople to do any due diligence that we find appropriate before we were to make a transfer for that, like that. So it just basically, it's come up and moved forward quickly enough so we could have put it on this year as an article for the town to approve, but we don't feel like we've done our homework yet. And so we wanted to have a resolution that made it clear that this was our intention to move forward with it. And we think and assume that the Putney Mountain Association would be the logical recipient. That's also been recommended by the Conservation Commission, but until we've done our homework, we don't want to say we're absolutely going to do that, thus the nature of the non-binding resolution.
So can we get some more voices in here, like to see how, if there's any questions from the floor?
Just add one more thing that remind people that in 1950, in 1998, and 1999, the townspeople have voted not to log that property.
Okay, great. Are there any questions? Yes, Alan.
If we approve this resolution now and through your due diligence, you think it's a good idea, you'll act within the next year before the next town meeting, do you think?
I think it's certainly possible. One thing that hasn't come up that would be true if it were gifted is, as it currently stands, we pay the town of Brookline taxes on the portion of parcel that exists in Brookline. We basically even that out by having an agreement with them to maintain some roads that belong to Brookline that happen to be on our side of the mountain. But we do actually have to write a check for taxes, and then they write a check back to us for highway department services. If Putney Mountain Association were to purchase it, it would go back on the tax rolls, which it hasn't been since it was originally taken over by the town, so it hasn't been on the tax rolls for 70 years. They would pay that, that would all be in current use, so it's a fairly small chunk of money, but it's a little bit of money that would be coming into the town in lieu of the fact that as it is now, we actually pay some money out from the town. So that would be a clear benefit of Putney Mountain Association as far as the fiscal responsibility of the town is concerned.
Any other questions? Yes, Anne?
I'm Ann Carey with the Conservation Commission. I'd just like to confirm that for 20 years, the Conservation Commission has done no work on the town forest at all. All the trails, all the maintenance is done by the Putney Mountain Association. And no money, no nothing. You're a ballgame. My question is, will due diligence include an evaluation of what these trees are worth as carbon sinks and what the undisturbed forest floor is worth as a carbon sink?
Do we have anyone who can answer Anne's question?
I think it would. I mean, I think that, again, my feeling is the consensus of this board is that we don't want to log the land. We're not interested in that. But if we had $350,000 worth of timber up there, which I'm pretty darn confident we don't, hang on a second, then, you know, we would need to take that into consideration. It would be our responsibility to take that into consideration. My anecdotal experience with logging is that if you're a private landowner and you do the logging yourself, there's some pretty good money in it. If you are contracting out to somebody for what more than likely is moderate to low quality timber in that location, just given the nature of the topography, et cetera, its value from my perspective is much higher as standing trees than it is as timber, but until we know that for sure. So I think that, you know, could we put a value on that in? I'm not sure we actually could, but it's definitely in our thinking. And we don't, you know, we certainly aren't looking to scrape $2,000 out of it for the town by scratching the trees off of it and then handing it over to somebody. But again, we need to know what the answers to the questions are. So
we have a bunch of hands up. Lisa in the back. Lisa.
Lisa Papazian. I'm not exactly sure what I was going to say, but I feel like even if there's $350,000 worth of timber on it, if the town maintains it as a town forest, its highest and best use to the town is as a forest, not as a cleared piece of land. So it surprises me that that's a consideration, since it seems to me that the conservation, when I was on the Conservation Commission, and the town's ownership of these various pieces is conserve them for the town. And this is an incredible opportunity to partner with an organization that is way more active than the town in managing and allowing people to access those in a meaningful way. So yeah, that's all. That's just my comment.
And again, I think
maybe Josh, for now, if you could hold off, because there's a bunch of other questions coming up, and then you could just answer all of them, if that's okay. Because I saw Janice Baldwin had her hand up, and I think Ann had her hand up again. So maybe we could just get the questions, and then we can have a...
Janice Baldwin, just quickly, and who would conduct this due diligence for on this kind of piece of property? I have no experience knowing how that would happen. Would you bring in, another organization who would do that? Would the select board do it? Would the conservation, it's collaboration? How would that happen?
We could have a committee.
And Ann, do you want to, you had your hand up as well, Ann?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get some answers then.
You want an answer
Yeah.
to that? My hope would be, Janice, sorry, that we could find somebody local who has the knowledge to give us a reasonable, we don't want to spend money to do this, and we're not looking to spend money to do this. So I think that, there are a number of talented and capable loggers and or foresters in the area who could say, you're way better off leaving it as trees. But until we have somebody who's qualified to tell us that, I think, again, anecdotally, that's what we all believe. But I think if we were to come before you, say, a year from now, as Richard accurately pointed out, it's been voted 3 times not to log the property.
Right.
If we were to come before you a year from now and say we've decided to give it away, and somebody else stands up and says, wait, there's $500,000 in logging on there, then that's a discussion we need to be informed about. So,
May I add something?
Sure, there's 2 hands up though, just if it's brief.
Okay, so I have reached out to 3 different forestry companies, local, and I'm going to work with them. I'd like to have somebody walk the property. The other thing too is this property is a valuable asset, whether it's the timber stand or conserving, because we definitely don't want it developed, and for recreation. And it's also now considered a valuable wildlife corridor, okay? So this whole board, including myself, all agree that this property has value. Now, in Josh's comment about the timber, if we don't know what's there, we don't know how valuable that land is. And we may want to retain it as a town, because when we borrow money, they look at stuff like that. So that's part of that due diligence review that we need to be able to do. And we'll consult with legal counsel as well, and we can work with VLCT because they have a whole legal department. So they'll be able to work with us and direct us as well. But there are questions that are not answered yet, and we need professionals to do that.
So I'm going to call on Lionel, who hasn't spoken on this issue first, and then Ann is also waiting.
Lionel Chute, I have to respectfully disagree with the approach of the due diligence. The assumption that the value of the property rests in its timber is really very reductionist and is not accurate. There are a variety of values on any property. And somewhere like the Putney Mountain would include certainly wind resources. You have mining resources, you have minerals, you have biological diversity. There are definitely a variety of natural plant communities. There's the potential for rare plant species that may well be there, that a forester will not know about, will not have the training and the skills to identify. And to have a forester come in and evaluate the timber resource without having these skills. Other resources that come up are water resources, hydrological resources, wetland impacts from harvesting, siltation and erosion. There are many considerations when you're looking at a forest, and simply to hire a forester to come in and do an old school timber cruise, spin the prism, tell you, oh yeah, this is how much you got. Well, that's not taking into account the deleterious effects of the management, which frankly a forester's not going to be as thoughtful about. And so I have concerns about the approach that's been described so far as how to do due diligence. If you want to do real due diligence, then you do have to take into account what Ann was talking about. There are carbon effects as well. We know that more carbon is emitted into the atmosphere from disturbing the soil than from taking the trees away. That there's a tremendous amount of carbon in the organic layer of the soil that once you drive tractive machinery over, it goes up into the atmosphere. And so I just want to share those thoughts.
Okay, thank you. A response, and then to Ann.
So, thank you, Lionel. I appreciate that perspective. I think we all appreciate that perspective, and I think that this was just one example of due diligence. Right. And we would definitely consult folks like you that have these expertise that can bring us more ways that we can explore this and suss it all out before making any decisions. And I don't think anybody on the select board discounts the importance of carbon sequestration. So it would definitely be a major part of our consideration, I'm sure.
I would reiterate that and just say, I think I was pretty clear in how I made the statement that we're looking at this as due diligence overall and not specifically as a money-making thing. Right. It's my assumption, again, that any forester is going to walk in there and say, don't cut these trees, but I could be wrong. I mean, I know foresters come from all walks, but the people we're going to consult with are going to be people who are involved. They're local Putney people. They may well already be involved with Putney Mountain Association. You know, we're looking at this also from a very nuanced perspective. So I want to make it perfectly clear that sort of generalization of as what I was referring to as due diligence is not complete for what we're thinking of doing. So.
So Ann has her hand up and has been waiting, and then we'll go to Lisa. Lisa?
I think I'm already behind the times, but I did want to let you know that in 1992, Bill Gunther, our then county forester, did visit the town forest. At that time, Bill Gunther noted that the forest had little potential for quality saw logs and other uses should be sought. And no forestry plan was devised. And I would also like to say that even though they're wonderful people, our local foresters will probably want some money for doing any kind of in-depth evaluation, and that Sam Shinesky, as the current county forester, could just give you a quick sense, probably for free, of what the land is like up there. And he may be very sensitive to things other than just saw logs. Not as well as Lionel would do it, but I just wanted to give that piece of information.
Great, thank you. Lisa.
Lisa Papazian, I finally figured out what my question was. So this is a question for the Select Board and for the Putney Mountain Association. Could you, something Karen said about that it might be valuable to have it in the town's asset column for the other purposes. Putney Mountain Association has been generously maintaining it for many, many, many years. Could you clarify what the advantage of transferring it to them would be? What are the pluses? Why would we and why wouldn't we? Trees and carbon aside.
I guess I have two answers to that. One is the answer, which I think I said already, is the tax purposes, which are obviously very limited. Yeah. But still, taxes coming in are better than taxes going out. The other thing I would say about it is that it would, not that I think Putney Mountain Association is going anywhere, but it's assurance of a good steward. And I think that that's on any land that's conserved. Stewardship is very, very important. And we as a town don't take that on, as you sort of implied. Putney Mountain Association does take that on. I guess from my perspective, I don't see any downside of Putney Mountain Association holding that land for all practical purposes as a town forest for the town of Putney, but in their name. I mean, I think that if anything, it gives us almost more security than the town itself holding it, because the townspeople could choose to do things differently in the future, and the Putney Mountain Association has a very clear mission, well laid out, and a very proven track record of stewardship. So that would be my feeling.
So I don't see any hands up at this point. I'm wondering if we might be getting, oh, Jamie.
Jamie Comtois, Putney. I just wonder if there's a way to bring Lionel's point of a comprehensive analysis in addition to the timber mention into the resolution. Is there a way you could just
Do you have
add
an
that
amendment?
in? Yeah, but I don't know, I'm not an expert in this, so just meaning mentioning the need for a more comprehensive evaluation of how we analyze beyond the name timber. Because I think that's, you could actually...
Well,
Timber's never mentioned.
yeah, timber is not mentioned in the resolution.
I
And
didn't
also,
see it, yeah.
this is a public meeting. We have stated, I think, as clearly about as we could, that that would be our intention. So I guess I wouldn't feel that would be necessary in a resolution. But
Okay.
You all have heard my opinion and their opinion, and I think that that's our intent, is to do the due diligence that we feel is necessary, whatever that looks like, in order to feel comfortable with this proceeding forward.
Okay, so there's no way to add language that said...
Absolutely.
Something very specific that said, we would look at the value of it and we would look at this kind of expertise to help us figure that out.
So all I need is some language right now. The language says, the sentence that could be helpful is, be it further resolved that the select board perform a due diligence review to determine whether this property is a valuable asset for the community. If anybody wishes to amend that language, Doug has his hand up.
Lionel says it's all good.
Lionel says it's okay. So,
Okay.
So you're not going to make an amendment, Jamie? Okay. I just want to make sure. Okay.
Never mind.
All right. Thank you. It's always good to think about an amendment. I'm not opposed. Robin, do you have something you want to add? And then Doug, it looks like.
Robin Ekstrom. I just wanted to thank the members of the Select Board for the manner in which they're dealing with this. I think the clear sentiment that I'm hearing is that you feel that the best use for this land is to turn it over to the Putney Mountain Association, that they would be more focused on stewardship for this piece of property, that all other considerations are secondary, and that in due diligence and mentioning timber, that specifically that you're really just thinking that as people who are responsible for the finances of the town, you owe a certain responsibility to the taxpayers to say, before we give this away, it does have a certain value. We think it's a good idea to give it to these people, but we have to report this to you. So just to clarify that and to thank you for the fact that you are being proactive and looking for the best use for this very valuable resource. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Doug has his hand up.
Doug Grant. So this last summer, I spent every Sunday hiking up there to tend the rams, and it was a great experience. But I had one incident that raises a question, and that is who carries the insurance and would cover an accident. I happened to catch my foot on a root, And in catching my balance, I started to stumble against a rock. And I could see myself coming down and cracking my skull open. So I had a near casualty experience. So my question is, who covers the insurance? And would that, is there insurance now to cover an accident like that?
Yes, currently our general liability policy covers it.
Okay, now, so in your consideration, you're doing your due diligence, maybe that would be a consideration on the positive side of transferring it to somebody else who would cover that liability?
Yes, our policy is set up in such a way so that I'm always amazed by the very, very limited difference. You know, we pay sort of a big package to the Vermont League of Cities and Towns that covers virtually everything. And more often than not, when we look to add or subtract something like this, they say, yeah, you know, that'll knock off $22. So, you know, it's not something we haven't considered, but it's very, very limited. Small portions of our policy seem to have very little effect.
So then maybe my suggestion is maybe there should be a sign that says if you get hurt,
At
talk
your
to
own
them.
risk. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. We have, are we getting to move so we can consider voting? I'm seeing some like interest in moving towards a vote. We have one hand up though from Anne. And then I'm going to suggest we move to a vote.
My suggestion is, do we want to amend this to include perhaps not a big committee, but a small committee that would look into the due diligence issue and the items that we might want to cover in that? And maybe
Do you have some language?
Oh, and I was thinking Lionel on the Conservation Commission could help be on that committee. No? Okay, then Lionel doesn't volunteer for that role.
Okay.
But that's, you know, we would love it if you would stay in touch with the Conservation Commission going forward.
Okay, great, thanks. So it looks like we're ready to move to a vote. I'm going to read the resolution so that people know what they're voting on. Resolve, the Town of Putney Select Board seeks a non-binding consensus from the electorate on the questions of whether the Select Board should consider a gift or sale of approximately 49 acres of town forest in Putney and an additional 85 acres in Brookline, Putney Mountain. And be it further resolved that the Select Board perform a due diligence review to determine whether this property is a valuable asset for the community, and be it further resolved that this resolution does not bind or legally obligate the board to gift or sell this property. All those in favor of this resolution, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. It appears that the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and the resolution passes. We do have a number of other items on other town business. One, I have in front of me, and this does not include the school portion, which we'll get to as soon as I adjourn, just to let people know what's on the list here. Animal control ordinance, Janet Goldstein. Are you here, Janet, to do that? Excellent. So you will be next. Then we have a broadband communications union districts information on the floor. Then we have a solar exemptions discussion. And finally, there's any other business, and I know Alice has something under that. So that's what we're looking at. And if your moderator needs to take a quick recess, depending on how long this all takes, I'll let you know before we have an emergency. All right, so now we will turn to Janet Goldstein. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to talk fast. Hi, I am on the Animal Advisory Board with Abby Jacobson, Bill Grant, Kathy Rounds, and Janet Langdon. We've spent the last 2 years revamping the animal control ordinance and looking at how we would like to conduct our business in the future with dealing with animal complaints, domestic animal complaints. I'd like to thank Josh Edmond for his work this year as our animal control officer. It didn't last long. It's a very, very, very involved job. You get calls all day, all night from people, barking dogs, stray cats, dogs at large. And as many of you know, we've had a lot of problems. We've had some problems, not a lot, with animal attacks. And we have to figure out a way to deal with this. And we decided that revamping the ordinance was our first thing that we were going to do. One of the things that I would like you all to know is that we have no animal control officer. So don't call Josh anymore. He's not doing this. If there's a problem, it's the Putney health officer, the Putney deputy health officer, the Putney town manager, the Windham County sheriff, the deputy Windham County sheriff, or it could be anybody elected by the select board, but we don't have anybody elected by the select board. So if there's a problem, you need to call one of these other people. A couple of the biggest points that we changed in our ordinance is that we added, the way the ordinance used to read was that there was only liability if an animal hurt a person, and now we are having the ordinance say that if an animal while running at large causes reasonable fear of bodily injury by attacking or threatening to attack a person, a domestic pet, domestic animal, or wolf hybrid, or deemed dangerous by the ACO. So that's a big deal for us because, as we know, we've had 2 dogs die in other dogs attacking them in our community, and there was no recourse for these people really because the dogs didn't attack a person, they attacked an animal. And so that's a big change that we are making in our ordinance. We've defined our control area, animal control area. All dogs need to be on leash on all public roads with the exception of legal trails. So if you're walking your dog on a dirt road you've always walked your dog on, and the dog has been off leash all these years, and now somebody comes by and makes a complaint, you'll have to leash your dog. Having them under voice control isn't going to be good enough. It's leash law. In the past, there were only certain roads in the village that were required to have leashes. Now it's everywhere in the village and in the town, except on these trails. And there are only like a few trails that are pretty far out in the woods. But you will also be liable if your dog does any damage.
Janet, can you stop for one quick second?
Yeah.
Do you think we could get the people in the back of the room to quiet down? It's a little hard to hear Janet describe our animal control situation. Thank you.
So another incident, the first incident where a dog was killed in an attack, there was a lot of question about who the owner, what ownership of the dog was, and it wasn't clear in our ordinance because it was the owner, the person who was paying the bills for the dog. We're changing that to say any person who has actual possession of the animal. So if there's a dog walker walking somebody else's dog and that dog attacks your dog, they are still liable. The owner, that person, is still liable for damages. So we've gone through, we've made a more substantial violation, financial responsibility for people between, most of the fines are between $50 and $500. And this is really what's in line with other communities. And we've talked to people all over the state, and everybody's struggling with how to how to move forward in our new way where people's dogs are just running at large. So our ordinance will also talks about what is it to be running at large. You know, if your dog is running beyond the control of your own property lines, your dog is running at large, or your cat is running at large. It's gonna be very clearly defined. We've sent our ordinance to the lawyer, and he's gone through it and made changes, and this is just a draft. So we're gonna put the draft up online for everybody to look at, and we'll have a meeting where we'll go through everything line by line and answer questions before we adopt this into our law for our town. But I do need to tell you that there is a meeting coming up with the town of Westminster, and we're going to talk with them about joining forces in getting an ACO for both communities. If you look at our budget for this year, there's $300 allotted for stuff for dogs, like the license fees and the paperwork and the tags, and $1,000 allotted for to pay an ACO. And
Janet, when is your meeting going to be?
It's on April 2nd.
Okay.
And it's going to be with the town of Westminster representatives. Karen and I are going, and the Sheriff's Department will have a representative there.
And what time did you say?
I didn't say a time because I don't know.
It's not a public meeting,
But
though?
it's not a public meeting.
I see.
So, but just to say that it's going to happen, we're talking about it. If that happens, this is all going to have to get changed because we're going to have to adopt something that'll be easier for an ACO to look at. But please, I urge everybody to go online, look at the ordinance, make comments, you know, for yourself, make your notes, and when we advertise when the meeting's going to be, to please show up and give your input.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for all the work you're doing.
Thank you, Janet.
Important issue.
Can I just make one comment, Meg? And that is that in order for the town, the select board, to approve an ordinance, there's a requirement for 2 public meetings. So there will be 2 public meetings held more than likely at regular select board meeting times. So if this is a topic of interest for you, please keep your eye on select board agendas.
Great. The next thing I have listed here is the Broadband Communication Union Districts. Is there somebody here who's going to present information on that for the voters?
Meg?
Yes.
I just wanted to mention that there is a broadband grant out there. Wyndham Regional Commission was granted $60,000 to do a feasibility study and possibly a business plan to see how many households out in the community, in the county, are underserved by fiber optics. So there's hard copy surveys up front with Alyssa Harlow. They're also online. We encourage everybody to go online and participate in the survey. It's 1 per household. And you can go to Wyndham Regional Commission's website, and that information is with Alyssa as well. There's postcards with a little OCR that you can scan, and you can do it on your phone. But it's really important to see if there's a viable solution to get fiber optics into Putney so people can have better broadband service.
And just to add, if you already have accessibility issues, the library has computers and good access that you can use to do that survey.
Great. Does that conclude that?
Yes.
The next item I have is solar exemptions discussion.
So we're not really prepared to have this discussion yet. There are a small handful of exempt solar arrays in the town of Putney. As most of you know, those with less than 15 kilowatts, i.e. a residential system, are governed by statute anyway as to what you're eligible to or required to pay taxes on or not paying taxes on. Larger systems, we voted a handful of years ago, I would guess 5, maybe 6, to exempt, I think it was 3 or 4 systems in town. And so the rules, the state rules have changed surrounding that. So we want to have an ongoing discussion about whether we as voters would continue that exemption, but we are not sufficiently prepared to really have that discussion at this time.
Okay, so we now move to any other business to come before the voters. Alice.
I'd like to have this resolution passed by the town of Putney. Be it resolved that the town of Putney requests of the state of Vermont that a state-owned bank be established following the model of the Bank of North Dakota. My reasons. When we had the recession of 2008, North Dakota was able to weather that recession better than any other state because it had its own state bank. And online, they say, Bank of North Dakota creates financial solutions for current and emerging economic needs. We may or may not be there may or may not be a recession soon. There always is one in the future. Today, we have talked a great deal about funding various items for the town of Putney. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to know that we will always be able to get funding at a reasonable rate? Thank you.
So we have a resolution on the floor. Do we have a second? Janice Baldwin is second. Any discussion? Janice, could we have the language? I'm sorry, not Janice, Alice, thank you. The top part. Are there any questions? No? Then I think we will move to a vote on the resolution. I'll just read it again. Be it resolved that the town of Putney requests of the state of Vermont that a state-owned bank be established following the model of the Bank of North Dakota. All those in favor of this non-binding resolution, please indicate by saying aye. All those opposed, please say nay. It appears that the ayes have it, and the resolution passes. And that's all we have. So I think, I have one, Laura Chapman, and then the town clerk.
So I would like to propose that going forward, we invite one of our school board members to present when other elected officials present at the beginning of future town meetings. As a guest speaker.
Is this a resolution?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a resolution on the floor. Could I get that language? And do we have a second for this resolution? Lots of hands up. Ruby McAdoo, second. Are there any questions about this resolution? Thank you. I'm going to read it just one more time. To invite one of our it is resolved that, what are we going to say?
I'm sorry, I just scratched it out.
That the town of Putney Select Board resolves to invite one of our school board members to present when other elected officials present at the beginning of future town meetings.
Howard.
So questions? Yes, Howard. Can you use the mic? Thank you.
Ms. Moderator, It appears that the resolution on the floor is a binding resolution, but at this point, state law restricts us to non-binding resolutions. Now, of course, it could be an expression of a preference.
Right. So are you suggesting that I should not be asking for what all the other resolutions were non-binding? So we could still pass a non-binding resolution.
Yes, I'm just saying that at this time, it can only be a non-binding resolution.
Right.
But my impression from the way Select Person Chapman phrased it was that she may have considered it to be a binding resolution, which it cannot be per state law.
Correct. Yes, thank you for that reminder. Would be a non-binding resolution. Yes, do you want to take the microphone? Liz.
It came up at the WSESD meeting that a school board member cannot do that because they would need a quorum. You might want to consider, I don't know if they're going to be able to straighten that issue out in the future, but that's why there's no school board here. And they handed it over to the leadership councils.
Okay, so I'm willing to change the language to a representative from the Leadership Council.
Okay, so we now have an amendment to the non-binding resolution, which is to change, to invite one of our, could you give me the language again?
I don't know what the language is.
One of the members of our leadership council.
Thank you.
To invite one of the members of our, is that?
Of
Putney's.
Of Putney.
Central Schools Leadership Council.
Leadership Council. Do we have a second on that amendment? Gail. Did you get that? So we are now working on an amendment, which is now it's going to say that the select board resolves to invite one of the members of the Putney Central School leadership to present when other elected officials present at the beginning of future town meetings. Is there any questions about the amendment? We're just talking about the amendment now. It looks like we may be ready to vote on the amendment. So we're now voting on the amendment, which is to remove school board members and insert members of Putney Central School Leadership Council. Thank you. All those in favor of this amendment, please indicate by saying aye. All those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. It appears that the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and the amendment passes. So now we're back to the resolution. Ruby? No? Does anybody have any questions about the resolution as amended? It looks like we're ready to vote. Be it resolved that the Putney Select Board will invite members of the Putney Central School Leadership Council to present when other elected officials present at the beginning of future town meetings. Are all those in favor with that amended resolution, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. It appears the ayes have it, and the resolution passes. Any other town business? Yes, Ruby. Did you get that?
Ruby McAdoo. I wanted to thank the Putney Central School, the Putney PTO, and the town office for coordinating childcare. And I wanted to just report to everyone who doesn't have a child here that it was very well received. There were a lot of kids there coming in and out. And I think we can improve it every year, but if it really means a lot to families who are working and who need that support. And I wanted to thank all of those parties.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ruby.
All right. So I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn, knowing that once we adjourn, we're going to then jump into the school section. But first we have comments, an announcement from our town clerk.
I just wanted to publicize the town of Putney now has an equity and inclusion committee. We meet the first Tuesday of the month, 6:30, first Thursday of the month, 6:30 at Town Hall. And the mission of the Equity and Inclusion Committee is to identify and advise the Select Board on addressing inequities and encouraging inclusive practices in town services, programs, human resource practices, and decision-making processes. So we welcome public in attendance at those meetings. They're always posted online and posted in the normal spots around town. See you Thursdays.
Okay, so, all right. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Yes. Ellen, I knew your name. And do we have a second? Elizabeth Christie. So it has been moved in second to adjourn. All those in favor of adjourning 2020 town meeting, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. It appears that the meeting is adjourned.